Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fleet's Catchup Ramblings 23. Hope you're all having a fantastic week. I know that I absolutely am. And I'd like to thank you all for being here with me today. So we've got a lot to get through today, so I really do have to plow through the questions. So really gotta push it forwards. So yeah. So we really gotta plow through. Really gotta make moves. So yeah, really gotta plow through the catch-up questions today, so there's a lot to do. And by jingo are we gonna do it. What it also is warm in the UK today. It's supposed to get cooler, but not for a while yet. So we'll see how that goes. And there's just one more thing I need to do. Send that out on my server. And then into the dry dock and fire up the catch-up ramblings. And there we go. Catch-up ramblings fired up. So, without further ado, let me crack open... No, actually, not the document.
I have been given
To be fair, the document also is up to date with this one, but
I've been given a gift. I've got 99 inflatable balloons.
Why do you have 99 inflatable balloons?
she's messing with you.
I mean, even if she wasn't, I would still question why she...
Are gullible at times, Fleet.
Eh.
Rune, I banned you on Twitch for that. Why wouldn't I ban you on YouTube? Anyway, I'm gonna go get my breakfast.
Question, Rui. Do you get the joke of 99 inflatable red balloons?
You didn't say the red part. If you'd have said the red part, it would have been obvious what you were referring to.
It was pretty obvious.
Well, I kind of guessed that was partially what she was referring to anyway, but since you didn't say specifically red, it might not have been. I decided to hedge.
Anyway.
Hello, Ramal. Hello, Knight.
All I
Hello,
can say
Tino.
is- All I can say is, I want to be a fighter pilot in a super high-tech jet fighter.
Oh, for the love of God, really?
Everyone's a superhero,
To be fair,
and some of us are Captain Kirk.
Come on. Do we really
Tom's always
need a
mate.
short rehashing of 99 red balloons?
I'll sing it for you, because I'm home alone, and nobody can call me out for my shit singing.
Please do not,
Yeah.
because YouTube is aggressive when it comes to copyrighted music.
yes, like genuinely.
My cover will be that shite, it won't be copyrighted.
No, I don't
You
think you
say
quite...
that,
I
but
don't
they
think you...
tried to go after, I think, Clark for something similar like last year.
Yes, they did. It's
Like,
it's
It will be
yeah.
a
aggressively
recorder
vindicated.
version of the Pirates of the Caribbean song, Level Bad.
Good evening, ladies and
Anyway.
gentlemen.
Good evening, James.
Anyway,
And it's
let's move
brackets.
on a bit.
Good afternoon, Camp Rockina.
So I left myself
Oh.
a
Afternoon!
You left yourself
Carl!
a
pin
yellow
in
Left
the-
yourself
a
wide
yellow
open
dot
there, buddy.
in. Oh, did I pin as well?
you pinned it.
Ah, beautiful. 21st. Here we go. Yes, I left a smiley face to let me know what I answered. Right. Okay, so we did that one. Oh no, sorry. No, it's not checked marked because I didn't get to it. That's where we finished. Right. Okay. So we need to get through everything on that
quick heads
day.
up for everyone.
Yep. And then we go. Into,
Probably no Dr. Clark.
yes, probably no Dr.
He's
Clark
having
today.
internet issues.
Indeed.
Hello.
Hello.
That's fine.
he
We
might-
need one naval historian here.
He might still join over voice though.
It's Dr. Clark. It's
I hope-
hella high water.
I hope you don't mind that I'm sticking around here.
No, not at all. I want the mad German. Besides, I need to shout at you when I send you to the Eastern Front.
No, you will not.
Would you like me to do a really racist impression of Erica?
No.
Oh,
No.
Isn't that just me?
Fleet, if we ever gonna play Black Ice again, which is already a long stretch, you will send me to Africa. I will not deal with the Eastern Front.
No. I've got
You're
a
the
question.
only
Why are you all
competent
trying to
tank
play
commander I've
Germany?
got.
No. Why are you all trying to play Germany in Black Ice?
Because it's aggressively funny, and you either win or lose based on how dice rolls.
because-
Exactly, France.
If you're doing a big co-op, you do the British Empire, and you have someone trying to manage every front.
Nah. Like the whole point of a Germany playthrough is to have the backfighting and the bitching, which you kind of do.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I have you never heard of the Commonwealth commands?
Yeah. Right. Typical Gunnery Officer asks on Discord. What is your opinion on the M26 Pershing? Why do they call it a heavy tank in World War II and change it to a medium tank during the Korean War? Do you think they rushed the M26 into production by installing a Sherman engine? What if they fitted a more powerful engine for the weight of the tank during World War II in the production version tanks? Would the M26 in this case, now the M46, be one of the best heavy tanks of the World War II battlefield? I mean, it's a really easy question. It's just a change in the way
I
tanks
can't-
worked.
No.
Maybe if I remember correctly, didn't they reclassify it in 1945 to a medium while during its development it was a heavy?
No. It's strange. Okay, so it was a heavy tank with an asterisk of it was a heavy tank by the standards of 1942. By the standards of 1945 and 46, when it was largely reclassified, it was a medium tank because, well, US doctrine was kind of excluding the purpose of a heavy tank. Secondly, they fitted a Sherman engine in it because that was the only engine that they had that would have worked in it, because the engine that it was designed for, let's just say...
The M26 wasn't reclassified because of the Centurion. Various nations around the globe were coming to the same conclusion. Like, they were all coming to the same
Arguably it
conclusion,
was.
basically, of what the tank had changed.
No, it arguably is, though. Because the Americans do get a look at the Centurion, right?
Hmm.
And as Aberdeen Proving Ground, they fucking love it. They just don't like its gearbox, but
I mean, don't
hey,
forget.
potatoes.
I mean, don't forget T44 does exist as well, which is in a similar ballpark.
they also
to
don't
those
like
two.
its engine, but hey.
T44,
It's that.
it's different.
It's that same advanced.
T44 was designed as a direct replacement for the T34
It was.
to get rid of the design issues of the T34.
This is very true. But what I would say is that T44. What was it? Because it started with the.
It's relevant to this because the Americans
There is
didn't know
a-
about it.
Fair enough.
Fairly simple answer to this. The Pershing was originally intended to work with Shermans.
Mm.
Yeah.
Post-war, it says they changed it so that it replaces Sherman because they realized the level of category of tanks that they actually really need for the post-war world is massively different from what they originally were thinking during the war.
An interesting Centurion does have an effect
Well, yeah, obviously.
because
Centurion
Centurion
is part of the thing that made them
sets the standard
realize,
for what
"Hmm,
you want the modern medium tank to be in the West. Because while you can argue it if the British, if it was the first MBT or not, especially given Caravan and Conqueror, it shifted the paradigm of what your medium tank, your general purpose tank, your universal tank was. And with that slight shift of doctrine, that's where the Pershing fit in. Because It's essentially a way I've seen it described is the jump from Cromwell, which is the Sherman's generation, to Centurion, which is arguably the Pershing's generation, is akin to the jump between the pre-dreadnought and the dreadnought when it comes to capability. It's why a lot of stuff gets changed. But there's good evidence from the Aberdeen Proving Grounds that a part of the US shift in doctrine was caused by the Centurion. Because it's an interesting little historical note that for the British and the Americans, and arguably the Soviets, the creation of the universal tank isn't the design lineage of the medium tank. It's the design lineage of the heavy tank. That had reached mechanical reliability and efficiency that you could use them as general purpose vehicles nowadays. Hence why a lot of the 1950s and 1960s heavy tanks have traits you would have likely seen in a lot of earlier super heavy designs. So the British as far early as 1942 are looking at a 120mm on a super heavy 90-ton, 80 to 90-ton chassis. As you understand it, the Americans are with T-95 to a degree. And so are the Soviets. It's just an interesting fact. Medium tank goes the way of the dodo, not the heavy tank. Anyway, where were we? Oh, and that's further proof by the fact that Carnarvon is much similar, has much more in common with the earlier AV prototypes for the universal tank than Centurion does. They actually reduce the armor on Centurion to bring its weight down, so it can perform the idealized universal tank role. Anyway, I know I've gotten off topic. Do you want to next question?
Yes, we probably should. So the next question is... Brandon Larson asks, what if the Tunguska meteor impacted the planet during the Second World War and hit Berlin during a speech by the Fuhrer in 1949, at the height of the Battle of Stalingrad? Does this end the war outright, and what is the fallout from such an event? Well, you've just decapitated German leadership. And you know what the Nazis are like. They're very mystically minded people. They might see this as an act of God, or, I don't know, some woo-woo mysticism that may be the cause of the loss.
Or Jewish magic.
There is that as well.
Yeah,
honestly, it really just generally depends on who in the Nazi hierarchy survives.
Well, Hitler's dead, apparently, so there is that.
Yeah, but it depends. Are we talking they have historical succession? At which point the war Germany probably looked.
The problem you've got is that it's specifically during a speech, as in a full party Nuremberg speech. So that's the entire apparatus of the Nazi party decapitated at a stroke.
Honestly, at that point, the Wehrmacht would probably make sure, even if somebody from the higher leadership survived, even though just
Operation Valkyrie.
Immediately. Yeah.
Is it a speech in wartime?
Yeah, it's not.
Because it probably doesn't knock out the Nazi high command then.
Well, I know Hitler dies.
Because those big speeches that had most of the party, those were pre-war.
Well,
Hitler's speech during war times were over radio.
Right.
Very limited gathering.
Well,
do the Nazis have the last, the last survivor, or whatever the Americans use? You know that there's designated survivor.
No,
they'll have a designated survivor.
The thing is, Berlin has been wiped off the map. Hitler is dead, and at that point, Operation Valkyrie goes.
Survives.
But yeah, it doesn't matter. Operation Valkyrie goes.
Yeah, the Wehrmacht will not sit by and let Goering just or whoever survives go over.
Like
But it really depends how fast they move in.
Yeah, they've been
What year is
granted a
this?
gift.
Not necessarily a
Remember,
gift,
the
but
Wehrmacht is very
not-
heavily Nazified as well.
It is,
But,
but
yeah.
it's hard to overstate quite how Valkyrie wasn't an anti-Nazi move. It was just, dear God, can we stop the war before Germany implodes again?
get rid of the leadership in general.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think it's like I don't think it's like a gift to the Wehrmacht at that point, but basically an opportunity to just get rid of them.
Yeah.
It could fail. It could backfire horribly, but it could also just lead that the Wehrmacht takes over.
It wouldn't surprise me if they did, and given the aristocracy of the Wehrmacht, and the fact this is 1942. Well, first things first, they're going to open immediate negotiations with the.
And they're going to get told to fuck off.
Yep.
Politely.
Might never be, but
Can you fuck off and leave?
I mean, I find it more interesting what they would do to the SS at that point, because if they take over, the SS would pretty much lose all of its status, and the Wehrmacht would basically, well, they just dissolve it entirely because they do not want a paramilitary group go about.
I don't think they would be able to get rid of the SS though.
I mean, for what purpose would they keep them around? Or at least make sure.
A lot of the SS were the internal security agency, and especially with the fact it's at this point the Gestapo is still subordinated to it largely,
This is.
and the SS is doing internal security.
But at that point, on what terms would the Wehrmacht trust the SS? Because I don't think even if they keep them around,
but the Wehrmacht, if they start a fight with the SS, is going to be stuck between the Soviets and the SS.
I mean, this is prior to the hyper-militarization of the SS, which occurred in 43-44. You haven't seen the vast... You're not talking about the SS making out a decent portion of the armed forces of the Third Reich. If it comes down to a shooting match, the Wehrmacht's going to steam them.
No.
I mean,
They really are.
Yeah, but if the Soviets didn't exist, then I'd agree. But the Wehrmacht still got the massive Soviet-issued shape.
There is, but there's enough... Like, forces can be withdrawn from Africa, Italy, and the Atlantic Wall. There are assets the Wehrmacht can pull in. Norway in particular, without Hitler's hyperfixation on a possible counter-invasion, Norway's a great source of manpower and materiel that can be drawn in.
They can even technically do more, because
but the SS
much of
troops will
the...
be better positioned than the Wehrmacht troops.
Yeah, the
SS
SS is
troops
better
are in
position. And it's also a case of if they try and pull out of Norway, the Royal Navy's getting a vote.
I mean,
the biggest thing is that if there is going to be an internal struggle between the Wehrmacht and the SS, it's going to be yet again the reserve army versus SS that is garrisoning in Germany. It is literally going to turn into what Operation Valkyrie in real life will become, except without any of the modifications. The reserve army will just end up being like, well, the SS is now officially a internal disruption, and we must remove it in order to ensure the continued survival of Germany.
I mean, either that or they will keep the assets on a very tight leash. Like, definitely they will not let them go around as they did usual.
They'll probably take advantage of the internal power struggles in the SS, remove Himmler, and replace him with somebody more willing to work with them. That's probably the angle they'd go with. Got
If this
Himmler.
once war starts, Himmler and Hitler are very rarely in the same space.
But fundamentally, this also comes down to the issue of, is the German High Command going to, continue listening to Nazi High Command? Or what remains of a Nazi High Command?
If Valkyrie's gone into effect, no, they're not.
No, Valkyrie originally was used as an internal security thing.
The whole point of
Valkyrie could be activated for natural disasters.
in that case, then it absolutely is. The question is if who survives and who's giving the orders.
Because remember, Valkyrie's success also hinges on a large part of the Nazi Party and support from branches of the SS, including stuff like explosives from SS Charlemagne.
I mean, even
You take out, even part of that cabal dies due to Tunguska.
yeah.
Lazy author. Lazy author just wrote a German civil war. I don't think it would turn into a civil war unless the army fails to actually suppress the remaining Nazi leadership. Because if the whatever Nazi leadership actually survived and rallies up the population at that point with whatever SS troops are still out there, then at that point I think that the army and the SS would openly clash.
Yeah,
Like I
it's
said, this is
Actually,
based on the assumption that the army stops listening to Nazi high command.
Yeah, but this also assumes that the army stays whole.
Yeah, but which is also the problem that whoever's loyal, which is part of the army but still loyal to the Nazi leadership.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, it really depends who moves in first and how swiftly they are.
Honestly, has anyone played TNO? Yeah. Has anyone seen the first Nazi Civil War? If you take out a good portion of them, you probably see something like that. Let's be real.
Although, who would I am curious who if the Wehrmacht actually takes over, like who would be the immediate successor to Hitler at that point? Would they be just like form a war council at that point with the German general staff leading it, or would they actually put in a figurehead as well?
There's probably some figurehead.
It turns into a shooting match, I think.
But yeah, if it turns into a shooting match, then that part is irrelevant.
Yeah, because we know
Deal with
that
that after the shooting.
Because we know that several cliques in the army, especially amongst the field marshals, saw themselves as the successors to Hitler, not the Nazi Party, and were quite willing, at times, to fuck each other over, and even to the point of sticking the SS and Gestapo on each other.
And don't forget, it's 1942, so the hair is still full of. It's still full of.
Still intact.
Yeah, it's still full of Nazi party hardliners in command.
Yeah, that is.
It could end up being a Wehrmacht civil war, where some of the non-Nazi hardliners no, we're done with this. Stop trying to maintain this Nazi government.
We also
I don't know that far. Given the German states' essentially internal situation of crabs in a bucket, and the ideology, they haven't had the 1943 yet, and 44, which flattens the Wehrmacht, and sort of largely breaks a lot of it, the programming and the spirit behind it. You'd probably just see multiple Nazi factions who all think they're the rightful successors.
Yeah,
Personally, I think the German Reich pulls a China.
Warlord.
Warlord.
Well, I would wonder what the other branches would do, what the Air Force and what the Navy would do at that point.
Well, we know for a fact that Luftwaffen's all supported to Hermann Goering. And we know exactly what Hermann Goering will do.
Yeah, assuming he survives.
Yeah, he'll try to take power.
Hermann Goering, during 1942, after the Battle of Britain till mid-1943, is under de facto house arrest in his home in Bavaria. So if this asteroid hits Hitler, he will live.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible the SS would just rally up behind him then.
I mean,
Um,
he was probably the final survivor, the highest ranking survivor.
Yeah.
He would be,
Despite being de
yes.
facto exile.
Goering is weird because he's a fat drug addict that's off his head 9 times out of 10. But the 1 time out of 10 he isn't, he can be incredibly lucid and farsighted. Unfortunately, that's so rare it's hysterical. I mean, look at the speech he gave to the German aviation industry in 1942, which is one of his rare moments of actual lucidity, where he basically lamented the constant pursuit of the cutting edge of aviation rather than giving him reliable, dependable airframes that can do the job he asks of them. Saying, you all laugh, and this is a direct quote, you all laugh at these 4-engined American and British crates, decrying their poor performance and lack of speed, but I tell you solemnly, I would rather have 400 of those crates than some of the fast, lean bombers you've been providing me with.
Yeah. Because the thing you've got to remember about Goring is that he's a really shite military commander, and he's arguably the shite chief of staff. But one thing he's absolutely brilliant at is political maneuvering. He's a politician.
Raider was still in
stunning.
charge in 1942 of the Kriegsmarine, was it?
Yes,
Or when did
if we're talking about if we're talking about Stalingrad, the Battle of the Barents Sea hasn't occurred yet, and is still a long way off.
Okay, good. So, would Raider wouldn't side with the SS at that point, would it? I think Dönitz would, but
Raider would bring the Navy on side with the with what basically the Navy would stay neutral, try and keep their programs going. So things like the completion of Graf Zeppelin, the completion of Seydlitz, Hipper, the repairs to Scharnhorst, and then they'd basically as soon as it became clear who the winner was, side with them.
I mean, would they at that point? Because I'm not sure neutrality would really suit them, because whoever wins, it may be the Wehrmacht at that point or the SS. They know that he didn't really help them at that point, and now whoever wins is in a position to tell to remove him from his post.
I mean,
So that point, I don't.
Norway.
Yeah, okay, it's also possible he just fucks off to Norway. But how much SS presence was in Norway?
Not that much.
Norway
There
was
a large
basically
amount of, like naval infantry.
Yeah, Norway was basically a Kriegsmarine Fife for the majority of the war. There was Wehrmacht up there as well, but they usually got along quite well with the Kriegsmarine up there, and the Kriegsmarine ran the show basically.
Yeah.
Although, how would the Allies react at that point when they know, okay, the
Spontaneous
Hitler and...
cheering. Berlin is wiped off
Yeah,
the
but
map.
Yeah, would they change anything in their approach at that point? Would they maybe, I don't know,
Panic.
They would wait to see what happens. Although I will point out, the only way negotiations work, and if they happen at all, is basically if the Germans are willing to return to pre-1933 borders.
No.
No, I don't think that point. I think when did the Allies declare that it has to be unconditional surrender?
This is after the first conference. It's unconditional surrender or nothing.
Yeah,
Because the British aren't going to accept a conditional surrender. Neither of the Soviets.
Yeah,
And the British are going to be looking at a collapsing Germany, looking at a Soviet Red Army, and going.
When did the agree on it again? Do you know when?
You have the agreement with America in early 42. Because it's the ones that are the prelims to the Yalta conference, I want to say. No, not the Yalta.
Potsdam. You mean Potsdam?
Potsdam. Yalta's 44, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, Yalta's 45.
45.
Potsdam is also 45.
Right. I feel like we've kind of
Nuked that one into the ground?
a little bit.
It's
That's
a lot of
tangent.
speculating because we
Yeah,
don't have that much detail in terms of German internal workings.
Yeah, basically.
And
For the fact that when Hitler dies, who else dies?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
So, typical gunnery officer asks, opinions on the P-26 pea shooter. If there was a major war against Germany, Japan, or Britain in 36, in terms of only the air war, do you think the pea shooter would easily be outperformed and annihilated by the aircraft of the countries stated above in that period?
Yes.
What year, sorry? What did they say?
36. The
36.
The P-26 by 36 is on
Oh,
its
dear.
way out of US service. It's being replaced.
It's being replaced by a Hawk, yes.
Yeah, the P-26 is on its way out by 36. It would be a second-line fighter at best.
It's a short-winged biplane. I think it
Monoplane.
is-
It's monoplane. It is monoplane.
It is a monoplane, but
it's
it's
a first-gen monoplane. It's
Okay.
a first-gen monoplane.
That would explain
It's just
why my
its
brain
British
is...
equivalent is the Gladiator, which is a biplane. Even then, the Gladiator.
Out of all of the
better
aircraft built in the early 30s, so that 30-33 period, that period between 31 and 33, the P-26 is arguably the worst. It's a maneuverable little bugger, but it's anemically armed and it's short-legged.
They're actually not that maneuverable fleet.
You know,
In general, from what I've heard of the
Excuse me.
what's it called P-26, it is just terrible in most regards.
Yes.
I'm just trying to process the fact that Fleet said that the P-26 was the worst aircraft that entered service in the early 30s. Why aware this thing called the Red Air Force exists?
Yeah, but honestly, even in that regard, the number of the Red Air Force stuff is better than the P-26.
Yes. It
Right.
is saying something. I'd
right.
rather be in an I-15 than a P-26.
See, Dodders? Technically speaking, yes.
I wouldn't want
The
to be.
P-26 does get retired in 1956, but it gets retired in 1956 in Guatemala.
As a drone aircraft.
Which very much overextends its actual service period. Like, the Philippines
so-
only basically operate them until
So,
31,
wait,
China
its
operates them until 30.
contemporary isn't the I-15. Its contemporary is the I-5, which was manufactured in 31. So, I would much rather be in there.
Why does it look like that, Yuki? Probably because it's a first-generation monoplane for America.
It's first gen monoplane, yeah.
Well, there's your problem.
I think, Kilman, you might be right. I might have started out as a biplane design. I don't actually remember enough of it, I'll be honest, but...
No,
it
it's
wouldn't
contemporary
surprise me.
I-15. The U.S. Army Air Corps started receiving delivery by December of 33. I-15 started getting delivered by like February of 34. It's about it's around the same time. Yes,
Like, it's
the
within
I-5
a-
would
it's
still
within a
be
year.
something that the
Yep, give me a
P-26
second,
would have
Philippine.
to fight.
There you go.
I would rather be in the P-26 looking at.
Oh, no, I would be in the
I-15.
I-15, actually.
I wouldn't be.
I mean, it's a reliable aircraft that is teaching US aviation industry what the future is.
Yeah.
While it gets heralded by being like the first modern metal monoplane fighter for the US Army Air Corps. On paper, it looks good. It's why the Army Air Corps buy it, but everyone knows how quickly aviation technology is developing.
I'd agree.
It's like the US didn't intend to get into a shooting war with them, but it teaches pilots how to handle monoplane fighters. So,
In case of an actual shooting war, I'm not actually sure if they would necessarily use them in a frontline asset, even in a shooting
They've
war.
got other assets they can use, and they're actually very valuable as
In-
reserve and trainer.
at the time it enters service, at the time it's competitive, its most likely opponent is the Royal Air Force. because of the
Yeah.
the various war plans between Britain and the British Empire and the United States in the early 30s. So it's fighting Bristol
Gladiators.
Bulldog.
Bulldog's and Gladiator, isn't it?
No, Gladiator's
Gladi-
oddly late.
Later.
Like, it's one of those things where it's like when you realise that the Swordfish is a younger design than the Spitfire. The Gladiator is a relatively, it is the second best last gen biplane, but it is a
Yeah.
last gen biplane in an era of monoplane fighters. When the Gladiator enters service, Hurricane, Spitfire, 109 are all well on the way to entering service. The only thing that's better is the CR-42.
Because Gladiator is first flown in 34 and introduced into the Royal Air Force in 37.
Yeah, that's Hurricane and
it.
Spitfire contemporary. The Gladiator is late.
Are you looking at what the Gloucester Gauntlet then?
Yeah, Gauntlet, Bull. Yeah, you're looking at like the Gloucester Gauntlet, the Hind, and like the last, and like the Supermarine biplanes from the interwar period. But yeah, that's a Heinkel, Yuki. The 100.
100, yeah, that's a high gold one.
No, that's the
Yeah.
no,
Or
that's
no,
the
that's the
no.
112.
Or is that
That's the
112?
112.
The 112. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
mean,
Also,
good
hey,
aircraft. Just they were heavy.
hey, Killer Ben, nice to see you. Sorry, I was
Hello.
away dealing with something. I'm back though.
No, it's quite alright. But yeah.
Isn't the HE-112 the one that's got the radiators in the wings?
One of the versions had evaporative cooling. Evaporative cooling is something that everyone looks at as a system because on paper it's got really good benefits because you don't need to stick draggy radiators into the airflow because the entire aircraft becomes a radiator. And it works in race planes and record aircraft. Right up until you put a hole in it.
Mm.
And then it
Then
goes
the
to
entire cooling
very
system
great.
fails. Yeah, and then the engine melts.
Radiators don't tend to like being shot at.
No, I mean, like
Limited stuff
certain
like that.
aircraft radiators had a better propensity to withstanding damage, but if the radiator is crippled on an aircraft, the engine will eventually fail.
Hmm.
So you're not pulling off like you have with the R-2800s, where it's like, we have confirmed reports of a cylinder being completely blown off the engine, and the engine going, that sucked, and keeps running. Not great, but enough to get the aircraft that it's mounted to back. You're not pulling that off with any liquid-cooled engine,
Yeah.
really. And evaporative
realistic.
cooling...
And
Go
to
on.
be realistic, you're not pulling that off with the ever-increasing horsepower engines, too. Because
No.
losing that much oil from losing an entire cylinder head is going to shorten the engine
engines.
life considerably. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Like the R-2800's about the... It's as big and as powerful you can get with, in theory, in the best possible circumstances, surviving long enough to be useful to the pilot of the aircraft. Once you get into the 3000 series... Well, the 3000 series are just going to melt anyway. Like, oil or not, they just catch fire. It's like, we need to save weight. What should we make parts of this really hot engine out of? Magnesium. Genius! Why are our engines bursting into flames? Because you made them out of
It
metal
worked
that
for
goes
Ferrari in
boom.
the 60s. It worked for Ferrari in the 60s.
Yeah, but there's a reason the United States Air Force lost several nuclear weapons because B-36s just burst into flames. Because their engines caught fire. Now, granted, that didn't help the engines were mounted backwards, but still.
You having 4 banks of cylinders is a bad idea. For heat.
Right.
It reminds me of... Has anyone here seen the Top Gear episode where they do the 24-hour race?
Yes.
Yeah.
But Le Mans.
Silverstone.
And they pull out, and then they have to pull out all of the front of the engine, like the whole front of the car off to get at the back of the engine compartment. That's like trying to fix a 4000 series Pratt and Whitney.
I mean,
It's like trying to fix it from the wrong side of the channel tunnel. I'm honestly surprised for the B-36 they didn't actually fit it with crawl spaces in the wing so that you could check the engines.
yeah. Knight, P-26 is not comparable to the Mitsubishi A5M. The A5M is a much better aircraft.
And
So
Lisa,
much later, bro.
And to your comment about defeating zeros, even a blind squirrel finds a nut.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
like-
I'd like to point out there is a tale in Britain, and it was confirmed of when I can't remember if it was a Spitfire or a Hurricane. They were moving it from Factory A to Factory B, or to the airfield, and this plane, without any guns loaded, managed to shoot down two BF-109s. Because it basically caused them to maneuver crash.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maneuver kill.
And it's a case of, just because you can do something
Yeah.
once or even twice, maybe,
Doesn't mean you should.
doesn't
It's
mean
also
you
in the-
should, doesn't mean this is a norm, and
It's like
yeah.
it's like a good portion of the short Sunderland's recorded air-to-air kills are from pilots underestimating just how close it is to the water.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Or
I mean,
underestimating how many guns it had.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
next.
and also in the Philippines, like yes, a 26 gets some air-to-air kills, but it's also the situation where all the zeros wings fall off if you put it in a dive is proven to be a thing on both sides, because I think a P-40 does it in the Philippines.
It's like saying that the Sky Raider is an adequate air-to-air combatant in Korea.
Because it got a
It's Vietnam.
the Sky Raider is one of the most statistically successful MiG killers in history, because it shot a 17 down in Vietnam.
Yeah. So,
Or to go more extreme, the Po-2 shot down a pair of sabers.
yeah, it's not indicative of, Right. Typical Gunner
It should be
Officer
in the
on,
AK.
on YouTube asks,
going.
opinions on the M50 Ontos. Do you think it's a US Marine Corps stopgap for a self-propelled anti-tank gun or anti-obstacle platform if they get their hands on an ATGM system? What role does the Ontos have if there's a peer-on-peer conflict in the 60s? Well, it was originally designed as an airdroppable way to get a large amount of anti-tank firepower out of the back of a transport aircraft.
This is
The
before
army.
era
Well,
of
no,
anti-tank
that's yeah,
missiles.
yeah. It was also before ATGMs proliferated. It was designed to be dropped out of the back of a plane. The army cancelled the contract. The Marines wanted mobile anti-tank firepower, so the Marines actually decided they were going to buy it. And from a Marine Corps perspective, it's a brilliant vehicle.
I think it
It's
also fits in a
incredibly
standard LCVP.
yeah, it's incredibly mobile. It's got really low ground pressure. It's very accurate with those
Quick.
recoilless guns.
Quick.
With the what, Foxo?
The army wanted it for airdroppable anti-tank work.
Yes.
The Marines wanted it as a fire support unit.
Well, no. Apparently, the Marine Corps wanted it for
Or the fire-
anti-tank. It was
Yeah,
used.
but
It was
anti-tank
used.
capability, but it was used for but it was also wanted for general fire control.
It was
It's
yeah.
why it gets stuff like a conventional HE round.
Yeah, but it was
Essentially,
not
it's-
procured.
Vehicle.
It's the weirdest Sturmgeschütz.
Yeah, it wasn't procured as
Yeah.
a fire support asset, but it was used as such in Vietnam.
Oh, but it was in the Marines.
Not from what I'm
Design
reading. The
brief.
Marine Corps wanted it for an anti-tank vehicle. In fact, the Marine Corps only took it on because the Army cancelled their contract. The Marines weren't originally in the market
stuff like
for
the
it.
Marines ordering stuff like specific infantry support ammunitions and stuff.
Well, yeah, it's the reason for that is because it's the Marines. They like to be able to fight anything, so you can kind of understand
And
why.
just-
Including each other when they run out of other
It's a fire
targets.
support asset. And it was called a fire support asset in Vietnam.
Yes, because that's how it was used. But again, as originally procured by the Marine Corps, it was as an anti-tank asset. Yes, they did the prudent thing
It was what I'm
of acquiring ammunition that enabled it to fulfill other roles, but as originally procured, it was as an anti-tank platform exclusively. It didn't last very long in that role, but that was the original procurement objective. As a useful asset, though, it was incredibly useful. You've got an ability to, because you've got spotting rifles on your which have exactly the same ballistic arc as your main guns. fire control is fairly easy.
Oh, the coax!
Yeah, no, not the coaxes. Well, yeah, the coaxes. And you've also got a 30 cal separately for defense as well, for against infantry. It's incredibly mobile, low ground pressure, can cross really shit pontoon bridges in Vietnam, hence why the Marines really love them. And you just go around knocking things off, and of course it's so light, when the Sea Stallion comes in, they can start lugging them around under Sea Stallions. In a peer-on-peer conflict, you've basically given the Marine Corps something that can knock out most Soviet armor, and will do so
But it's also-
effectively.
It's also likely to be deployed in situations where it will not be fighting the latest and greatest Soviet armor.
Yeah. Like,
It
against
will be
the...
fighting... maybe early 54s are the scariest thing you might run into.
Yeah, and that's still pretty terrifying, but the 105 recoilless will knock that out frontally.
Its most useful asset is the fact it's 6, easily handled, easily reloaded, semi-protected from machine gun fire,
Yeah.
recoilless rifles.
Yep,
That can
it's...
throw 6 large caliber HE rounds at something you really don't like.
Yeah, but its main asset... yeah, but that's only its tangential role. In a peer-on-peer conflict, it's an anti-tank asset, and would probably be used as such.
Not in pair on pair. In the pair on pair, it's throw HE at what we don't like asset.
Not really, because that's the Marine Corps' only source of mobile anti-tank firepower that isn't its...
You can't
Yeah.
carry both rounds at the same time.
Yeah.
You'd probably end up with a mixed load.
But the largest use of anti-tank and guns, anti-tank destroyers, and unfortunately ATGMs is shooting at bunkers.
I'm
Yeah,
aware
gonna
of that,
second,
but...
Panelists, hey guys, I'm going to second Wesley's question here. Can we get a look at the question document? Because I don't even know what the question is.
Well,
Dragon.
Fleet's
We're
not
not-
actually using the question document
Right
even though it
now.
is-
Why am I not surprised?
Because we're... And
But
also...
we're not doing this week's spare questions, we're doing last
We
week's
are
spare
actually.
questions.
No, we are doing. No, we're doing this week's.
No, we're on last week
We're
still.
Well, not that it matters. The
My
document
point
has
still
last
stands.
week's
Like-
questions.
I mean, no one ever gets to see the document.
I do.
Hey, Fleet.
Yeah?
Did you know that Powder Monkey logs questions in 3 separate places?
I am aware of that.
Okay.
But in this particular case, Dragon also does manually grab things from other places as well.
Yeah, I could get from the Discord as well because it's nice to actually have stuff in
Hmm.
all in one place. I just can't always be
Yeah,
around.
that-
Which is why I was
The
kind
AI
of-
is trying to take your
which
jobs.
is why I was kind of expecting that.
Mhm.
In fact, I believe I explicitly mentioned, Fleet, look, when I'm not here, you're going to have to do this, and was told, yes, I will.
Mhm.
Which, for the record, he has failed to
Yes,
do.
not.
There is a reason why Rambling 77 and 79 are missing on said document.
Ooh.
Also, since I feel since I know I can trust Runon.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Later
Lazy
on.
author Sanos, for insert reason, World War II ends in 1944, just a few months prior to before the American elections. Who is most likely to become the new US president, and how would that change the Cold War? That's impossible to know.
Depends on how it ends.
Yeah, it depends how it ends, depends who's seen as, getting the glory.
Yeah, but FDR won't run for a third term.
Fourth, you mean? I mean, FDR... no, FDR served 3 terms, historically.
Yeah, but didn't he serve after the 36, 40, and 44 elections, wasn't it?
He
They
died
won.
on his third.
Yeah.
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 I mean, he technically didn't serve a full term third time.
No, but he...
But those are the elections he won, right? 36, 40, and 44.
Yeah.
Yeah. He won 32, 36, 40, and 44.
And there's no reason he can't win 44 again, because, well, there's no term limit in this period.
Yes, there is.
No, there isn't.
No,
there's
there
not.
is.
No, there's
Term
not.
limit doesn't come until Truman.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might actually not come in until Eisenhower. One of the big liabilities for FDR.
It's Eisenhower.
It comes in under Truman because Truman is the last president who can run for a third term. Because when they do the amendment, he's given like a grandfather clause.
Yeah, one of the biggest liabilities for Roosevelt in 44 was that he was running for a third term, which was unprecedented. It was permitted.
No, fourth term. 44 is his fourth term.
Is it? No, it can't be.
Yeah, because
No, it's
He gets power in 36.
No, it is his fourth term.
It is his fourth term.
So he runs in 32, 36, 40, and 44.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
he wins 32, 36. Then he runs again in 40, basically on the we need someone who's experienced in government, who knows what they're doing in these difficult times, but I will not get America involved in this war if I can avoid it. He does everything and then US gets into the war, and then he basically plays the I will see us through to the end of it.
Yeah,
And also, the fact that
as my grandmother said, he kept it. We voted for him because he kept us out of the war.
And then, of course, when they were in the war, because everyone declared war on them, he kept America winning. So the choice is, a bit obvious.
Because why change horses?
Yeah, and also we're winning, and he keeps us winning.
So, just to put a comment on I think I'll go on to the next question. We really need to know how the war ends, because when the war ends with America's surrender, well,
Yeah,
the president's going to be a very different person.
Mm-hmm. Say hello to President Hermann Goering.
He's not going to put Hermann Goering in. The Americans are a nationalistic people. They'll put some...
Please let it not be Herbert Hoover.
dickheads-
Please let it not be Herbert
They'll
Hoover.
put in some dickhead right-wing senator in.
Was it Lindeberg?
No, Lindbergh was pro-German, but he's pro-German to the point that we should work with them. If the Germans are now marching down Wall Street, dismantling the US, Lindbergh will not be pro-German at that point.
Maybe
Because
he
that
could
is...
put Henry Ford in charge.
Ugh, what a horrible thought. Or,
Also,
But,
there's a way that you can spin it to where, we're restoring America to greatness after the excesses of the Roosevelt administration.
there is that. There's also the horrific
The
problem.
Germans are
that-
many things. Good at propaganda is definitely one of them.
There's also the horrific possibility that if they do this, they will spin off a certain former government that existed, so it can do what that former government used to do. Yay! Good times in the South.
I think we're forgetting the fact that, in light of the conversation, they'd probably put Obergruppenführer John Smith in charge.
Oh, good. Good.
Why did
fun.
you remind me that show exists?
Anyway,
It's actually
so
a really good show.
so
I
like that show.
yeah. So moving on. Typical gunnery officer
Good show in the
asks.
same way herpes is a good disease.
Typical gunnery officer asks. Question 17. Do you think the Vulcan bomber can do the job the F-17, B-52, and B-1 had during Desert Storm, and do the job better than the U.S.? It can't do the B-1's job because it's not fast enough and doesn't have the range. So in all three
Yes, it can
categories,
do the B1's job.
no, it can't.
Can.
Can't.
Speed's not much. B1's not used. B1 was not used for high-speed operations in this regard.
It was used as bomb
They
truck.
could absolutely be used.
Okay, so in one occasion,
B1's whole
it could,
thing is dropping a number of bombs.
yeah, it could do the
It can do
B1's
that.
job worse.
It's not about that. It's a case of how much money are you willing to spend. Because in its original configuration, it can't. With the reinforced wings, you can argue it can do the F-111's job if you give it the guidance packages.
No, F-111 isn't one of the aircraft listed. The
I
aircraft
thought it was
listed.
F-111, B-52, and B-1.
No, F-117, B-52, and B-1.
Oh god, it can't do the F-17's job. God, no.
No, that's what I said. Yeah, it can't do that job. It can't do. The thing is with B-52 is that they use missile trucks in this, flying from the continental US,
Yes,
and they
which
can't.
if you putting up the money to retrofit the Vulcans to carry guided missiles like it was proposed, it could do it.
not as well,
It has
and
the
not from
carrying
the continental
capacity, it can
United
do it.
States.
Most of these aren't coming from continental US.
Yeah,
though.
Most of
most
the-
B-52s are sorting from Saudi Arabia.
No. Pretty much all of
Or
the B-52
a
raids.
lot of them are going to come from Djibouti as well.
No, a lot of the B-52 raids come from the continental US during Desert Storm.
Some of them do, some of them don't. But you would just get the change of, they're operating off Cyprus now.
Or for the alternative from the UK proper, which the Vulcan could probably do.
Yeah. So it can arguably, if we want to throw money in it, do the B-52's job.
Well, okay, it can
do the
I will
B-1's
just-
job.
I will just give the caveat that it will do the job of both those aircraft worse.
Aha, found it. So, a single squadron of B-52s was being used from Louisiana, Barksdale Air Force Base, and would be used to strike targets in Iraq. Another set of them were operating from King Abdullah Air Base in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, as well as also RAF Fairford, Moron Air Force Base in Spain, and the island of Diego Garcia.
Did you just
So,
say Moron Air Force Base?
Yeah,
I believe he did.
Yeah, that's actually. Unless you want me to
love
say
it.
it in an
I will
incredibly
take
bad Spanish
15.
accent.
I love it. I'll
Because-
take 15.
Because wasn't the raid from the US the longest ranged air
Yeah.
raid in history? Because it took the record from Black Buck.
Yes.
Yeah.
35 hours of 14,000 miles.
And from reading about it, it was less a practical raid, more of a statement of power.
Of
Much
course.
like Black Book was.
It always
Well,
is
yeah,
about
Black Buck
statements
was
of power.
It was, we can do this, don't fuck with us.
Yeah, Black Book. Like Black Book was. Do you want us to do this again, but with nuclear weapons?
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, maybe like Vulcan by the 90s is like you would have had to had committing significant investment into updating and maintaining the airframes in the 70s and 80s for the Vulcans to even be flight capable by the 90s.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
It's not like the
it would have to have
B-52.
the same lifespan of the B-52, where they
Yeah.
keep throwing money at it.
Yeah, this is the thing. You basically would have to do. Yeah, that's the real problem. The Vulcan had the potential to do the same thing the B-52 has done. The problem is it required throwing the same levels of money the US threw at the B-52. The UK did not, and does not have that level of money throwing capability.
I mean, unless you see another production run of say 80
You'd need a
Vulcan
B3.
B2s.
You'd
A
need
yeah,
some form of
B2,
V3.
B3 with updated electronics and equipment in the 70s. Those probably hang around long enough. Well, they probably get retired in the mid 90s as the end of the Cold War dividends thing. So,
Yeah.
yes, but you're not. But like, there's a reason that the Vulcans end their days as maritime patrol and tankers, because everything else in their size class had worn out by then. Like the Valiants had faulty wing spars, and the Victors just life expired. It's just that the fact that the Vulcans' design made it structurally more rigid and therefore more resilient, that they lasted a bit longer.
It's a very good argument that the reason the Vulcans lasted so long is because they get their wings redone for altitude flight, which leads to them strengthening the wing routes and replacing.
the fact that the Victors
lot of
can't
racing.
do the low-level penetration raids.
Yeah.
Because the Victor's wing is much more flexible, which causes, I think in one case, for a Victor's wing spar to fail, but the wing not detach, and they get it back. They manage to land it, and one wing, and I think it's in the Black Buck book where they get out of the airframe and they're looking at it, and it's like that wing is noticeably droopier than the other one, and they're like, okay, no more Victor flying, because it basically it doesn't have the same failure point as the Valiant, but Victor and Valiant both suffer, generally speaking, the same issue that the Vulcan doesn't.
But an interesting fact is the original wings on the Vulcan and the original ring routes did,
Yes.
but it was them being re-winged, because one of the things they do in the re-winged Vulcan is they change the angle of the delta wing, which lessens a lot of the strain on it.
which the Victor wing isn't capable of being modified in the same way, even though fundamentally the Victor is the better bomber.
Right. So,
Yeah.
next question.
Sorry about the nerd out there.
That's right. Question 18. Do you think the AD2 AW Skyraider is better? Is Miles better than its role as a carrier AW platform than the fairly Gannet, even though the Gannet replaced the Skyraider AW in the RN service? Do you think the Skyraider is still ahead of its time? Did the British think the APS-20 radar on the Skyraider was useless? No, the AW Skyraider was one of the very, very earliest carrier airborne early warning aircraft. It basically replaced... The
Skyraider started entering service 46, 47?
Yeah, and the AW platform version of it came in... But basically, it was brought in to replace the AW...
The Avengers.
the AW Avengers. That's how early we're talking here. The Gannet is just better laid out, better set up, just a more modern platform. It was better in basically every way.
It benefits from learning from the use of the AW Skyraiders and the AW Avengers into a purpose-designed platform.
Yeah,
Whereas, I mean, if you're gonna convert a late World War II carrier airframe to AW, arguably the Avenger makes more sense because it's just physically bigger.
And you've also got better layouts for the radar operator.
You can put more stuff in it, whereas the the conversions of the Skyraider are much more taking what we have and bolting it to the new airframe.
Yeah, it was an okay platform, but there's a reason it bows out once better aircraft come in. And that's in both the US and the RN. Darcidius, if HMS Indefatigable was sent to the Falkland Islands instead of Invincible, and she blew up, how would this affect the development of new battle cruisers? Well, first of all, the British knew Indefatigable was vulnerable. I mean, she is vulnerable to the Sharnos guns. If she dies, yes. Yeah, the problem with the Indefatigables is that there are areas where they are vulnerable. There are.
At close range.
I think it's more a case of that Sturdy will go into that fight knowing that that she'll be slightly more vulnerable than her immediate predecessors. But I don't. You might have a case where she comes out significantly more battle damaged. Than what actually happens in the battle. But the Germans don't score that many hits, and as far as I recall, they don't score hits in what could have been dangerous places.
Yeah, and also...
And the battle cruisers take the hits, go, okay, and then drop out of range.
Yeah, and also, even if the worst case happened and she blows up, everyone like, wow, the ship that was actually vulnerable to the guns and the design that we all in the Navy knew was a misstep in battlecruiser construction has died. Okay. It's not going to change anything.
Sorry for all the lost at sea letters we're going to have to write.
Yeah, but it's not going to change anything with battlecruiser design. That change was already made when the big cats were conceived.
It probably will, though.
Not really.
You'd probably see more an earlier look at British magazine protection practices. So, but that's not going to change. The earliest you see an impact of that is Hood. Well, maybe RR, but they're so lightly protected relative to their firepower that unless you decide to rebuild RR as sort of design wise, or build them straight out the bat with at least the 9-inch bolt and not with the 6-inch that they're intended to have.
Yeah.
You don't see anything major until what becomes Hood starts being discussed.
True.
Simply because all the British battle cruisers are either in service or being designed at that point. Because 1914 is in that weird point of where Tiger is physically complete and is going to join the fleet,
But
and are early enough in their design and construction situation that you can probably work some fairly reasonable changes into them.
mm-hmm.
But that's still probably more along the lines of what actually gets done to them anyway, where they just go, oh, more armor.
The only thing I can see is a redistribution of the armor on the battle cruisers for the Admiral class and successors. Sort of
It
seeing a
pushes-
shift away from the belt extended.
It
And
pushes Hood more and more towards being a true fast battleship, rather than at the beginning being kind of this weird kind of halfway point.
Fully armored battle cruiser.
Yeah.
it's just a more Vanguard-like armor layout, to be honest.
So, yeah.
So, next question. The next question, you'll have to let me read it out in full, laugh hysterically, and then answer it. So you'll have to let me do this quickly.
Oh dear.
Typical gunnery officer asks, do you think the Bradley IFV is the worst of all NATO IFVs in the mid to late 80s? Do you think the Warrior is the best
No.
of all NATO IFVs? Unlike the Bradley, it's a compact design, can transport more troops, and even without the stabilizer and lower rate of fire for the autocan, it can still do more damage than the 25mm Bushmaster, since the crews are trained to fight without stabilizers. Every single thing in that statement is either incorrect or a fundamental misunderstanding of IFV doctrine and the way the Bradley and the Warrior were designed to fight. The Bradley is better than the Warrior in basically every way. It carries more firepower, it's got a stabilized 25mm, the 25mm absolutely does more damage than the 35mm Raden, because it can just put out more rounds. You'll have more effect. Yes, Dragon, it's a
No.
fact. It is a fact. It's
No,
not up, it's
because
not up
we
for
know-
debate, it's a fact.
Well, given
No,
that Dragon appears
right.
to have evidence to the contrary, I would say it is
So,
up for debate.
considering the fact we know the 30mm, especially for Desert Storm, got new APFSDS rounds that were far more effective.
It doesn't matter, you can't put as many rounds
Okay,
down range.
First things first. Which Bradley we're talking about?
Presumably the late
Because it's the
80s.
original Bradley, it's got the rate of fire limited Bushmaster, and it's the early Bushmasters which are a bit shite. If we're talking about the A1 Bradleys, the Bradley's one of the best IFV NATO's ever made.
Let me see, when did the A1... Because it says late 80s. When did the A1
That
enter
would
service,
be-
Foxo?
A1.
Yes,
that
it's
would be
A1.
the A1.
Oh, so if it's A1
The
then.
A1s. Then if it's the A1s, it's not the worst, it's the best IFV NATO's ever made.
Because that
Even
doesn't...
maybe you could argue the Puma's better, but
Yeah. Puma's... Is Puma an
the
IFV?
Puma's a
You're thinking
Oh,
of
okay.
not Puma. You're thinking of Marder.
Martyr?
That's the German equivalent.
Is it? Because you got
Yeah.
Marder and then you got its, I swear its replacement was called Puma.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
but Puma's
Puma
entered
is
service
2015.
like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's...
Yeah, but, okay, I get clear things up. I'd
Are
say
you talking about the
I
8x8?
meant until Puma. I meant it's the best IFV NATO's ever made
Oh,
until
Foxo.
Puma.
Yeah.
Right, which
Sorry.
Bradley are you referring to, for the record, Foxo, as well? I'm trying to figure it.
M2A1.
The
Like,
A1.
'cause-
I'm
which
sorry,
A1?
Because like,
Are you referring to... Because A1
are you
primarily
referring
refers
to
like M2A1, M3A1?
M2A1. Because that was...
M2A1.
right.
Yeah, because the ones that got
Right.
sent to Ukraine were M2A2 Desert Storm spec vehicles.
Yeah, the M2A1 was the one that introduced in 1986. Almost a third amount of the original Bradley, the M2.
Yeah. Is the Warrior bad?
Its main
No.
difference is it's got the improved HGM, which will be known as the tow.
Yeah. The Warrior's not a bad IFV, but it just pales in comparison to
Is
Bradley.
it TOW
depends
or
what you
O2
want
at
it
that
for.
point? I think it's TOW. I think when the A1 deploys, it's got TOW 2, not just
Yeah.
TOW.
And the thing is, if you're talking original favor Bushmaster in terms of rate of fire and damage, yeah, the 30 mil Raden can keep up. But if you remove the fire limiter, like you have from the M2 A1 onwards, the 25 mil just out damages the Raden in every
Also,
conceivable.
overall, the Raden's rounds are actually more effective, but
There's the
they're
problem.
a literal larger round.
Yeah, but it's an issue of ROE versus caliber. And
Well, it means, like, if you're a late 80s NATO IFV, what are you shooting at? Infantry and then BMPs. Both weapons will deal with those effectively. If not, and the Bradley has a better chance against anything heavier because it has an integrated missile system, which a lot of warriors don't get until the Milan edition is implemented.
Yeah.
And the TOW is
that-
the better missile
the 80s.
than the Milan.
Right.
And I would also point out
on
the.
the level
So,
as where the Warriors get Milan in the late 80s.
Yeah. I would also point out the fact that just coming down to if we talk about an identical engagement with a Bradley and a Warrior in a hold down position engaging a BMP that's coming towards them, the Bradley will be able to put more fire into that BMP in just terms of rounds on target than the Warrior will be able to. It's just it literally is more warheads on more foreheads. It really does just come down to that. And that
Are you saying it's a better human baloney factory?
kind of, yeah.
Well, I gotta disagree with that 'cause they're both pretty much identical. Because a BMP is not going to care the difference between it's being hit by 30 mil and it's being hit by 25 mil.
Oh, no, I was
Or
was
Also, assuming the crew isn't going to
isn't
be
going
like-
to care.
Yeah, that's also assuming the crew isn't going to be like, oh no, it's a vehicle, just blast it with a toad and move on.
Yeah, or hit it with the Milan.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's really a horses for courses kind of thing.
Hmm.
They'll both do what they need to do. I think it's trying to justify the Warrior is better because the crews are trained to operate without a stabilizer is more a damning statement of the design of the Warrior to not give it a stabilizer.
That's very true.
Because
I can
it's
understand
not,
the reasoning, but
It's not like we didn't know how to do it.
also, yeah, we could have very much made a non-electrical stabilizer. We had these in World
Yeah.
War II.
Yeah, like
Exactly, yeah.
genuinely,
Yeah, it's like a-
I cannot understand the reasoning behind that choice. It's just we know
I
how
can.
modern we know.
I can't money, and also Britain had a
It's
much
size.
larger fear. Yeah, size, and
It-
Britain also still has a much larger fear of EMP at this period.
Well, please, I'll explain it to you. So you're aware that a stabilizer, especially a two-plane stabilizer, is largely just a pair or a couple of gyroscopes, right?
Yeah, I'm aware.
Until you get electronic stabilization, there is a limit on how small you can make a stabilizer, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the size that Warrior is and the size of that turret, which if you've ever been one, it's small by my standards.
It's cozy. It's a cozy turret.
And I'm a short little sub 5'6" tiny Irish woman. But
I'm pretty sure it's actually smaller than some World War II tank turrets for British standards.
Oh,
they're
yeah.
small.
yeah,
Right.
it's small and you don't have the room for it.
So that's again shoulder stabilizer. Which that's generous if you call that a stabilizer,
Yeah.
technically.
Mm.
In terms of
maneuver... stable.
And it also makes it. Yeah, but that's like the argument of the first shot will be stable. The next 7 will be anti-aircraft rounds.
Mm.
So now you know the issues that the Duster Cruise
right.
had.
So, actually, so looking a bit more into it, technically speaking, this question does have a few more nuances. So first of all, the Warrior has 160 miles extra range on it than the Bradley does.
Okay, yeah, battlefield mobility
also-
is vital.
They are also 10 miles an hour faster,
Mm.
both on-road and off-road,
That's
with
and-
overall
that's just
superior
down
movement
to-
characteristics.
Is,
Yeah.
is
I
that
think that's
is
just
that
down to
track
Warrior's
speed
lighter,
or
isn't
is
it?
that field speed?
On both, apparently. On
No,
both
no,
on
no, I
road
mean,
and
like-
off-
Also,
like-
also
Is-
are we talking the original Warriors or the
Well,
improved Warrior package that's
Well,
got
before-
the additional armors?
Before
about
that question gets
310, yeah.
answered, I'm talking, is that the speed in trials, or is that no, we actually took it out into the field, and this is how
infield,
fast
from what I
we go.
found.
Infield, all three stats are infield.
Okay.
I mean, I do know, talking to some guys who used to be in the Army of the Rhine, they did comment that a Warrior could outdrag a... Well, they were drag racing Marders, not Bradleys.
Also drag racing.
I can say that the
Typical.
Warrior's brakes aren't great, though.
That I can believe.
Yeah.
That I very much can believe.
Steve, hit the brakes!
Why-
We're gonna hit Boris in his van! Shit, no!
Also,
Wolfgang!
I remember talking to a vet.
A couple West German farmers did lose a couple barns because Warriors at speed on a wet field, you touch the brake pedal and nothing happens.
Oh
Well,
my
no, something does
god!
happen. The tracks stop, and then you're just an uncontrollable 11-ish ton toboggan.
Here, Dave. Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
talking to a vet. He described it this way: when on exercise, the quickest way to stop the Warrior was to fire the cannon.
Here, Dave. Yeah. I've hit the brakes, mate. Yeah. What's the problem? I'm stuck. I stopped me head out of the turret.
46,
We're still
MPH
moving.
strengthful.
We're still moving.
So yeah, there was but apparently that was an issue that most of the NATO forces pointed out, is that in Germany, one of the jokes was to try and Looney Tunes the Russians and try and hide the fact that there was a river, because they figured that because even BMPs needed a bit of preparation before they could be amphibious, and they figured that they could just hide the river from them and they'd all just drive in it, because even if they saw it, they'd hit the brakes and nothing would happen.
Yep. And literally, you'd have a Looney Tunes moment. Like all I can hear is that little bomb whistling.
Yeah, because also another point is that the what's called Warrior can carry up to 10 troops, whereas the Bradley carries up to 6.
Well, that's
So
not.
it's
That's
not
not,
quite-
that's not a disadvantage. That's different doctrines.
But it is why one could say potentially the Warrior has more flexibility in that regard.
Not really. Again, like I said, it's down to
Well, yes,
But
doctrine.
one
because you-
could also
well,
say
yeah.
that a Warrior is the most dangerous target if hit.
But potentially, yes. But for instance, also then you could have with a Warrior, you could have say 6 men and a couple of heavy weapons teams. Like
Yeah.
so, yeah. Warrior is definitely a
But
better
Brad-
armored personnel carrier. Bradley is probably the better IFV. Yeah, I tend to agree with.
Yeah, Warrior's an APC with ambitions. Bradley's a proper IFE.
Because Bradley also doesn't just replace M113, it also replaces the anti-tank derivatives of the 113.
Yeah.
So that every single US infantry squad that has a Bradley has a on-ball system that can kill a T-80.
So this is why I very much don't think it's quite as cut and dry an answer as you initially said.
I still think it kind of
Especially
is.
because NATO, because US doctrine in Europe is expecting their part of the fighting to be much more mobile, whereas the British were essentially trying to just dig in and hold on.
Which is ironic that the British one's actually more mobile, though.
Yeah, that is a bit weird, isn't it?
Listen, nobody said we were smart.
Well,
Right.
It's
the
like I
requirement
said.
of the M2 is to be as tactically mobile as an Abrams.
Yeah.
If you tried to say limited, because can you imagine if the Warrior specification has to be as tactically mobile as a chieftain?
That would probably slow it down, actually.
Yeah, that'd probably be quite easy to hit.
Yeah.
You'd end up with
point,
a-
at that point, someone just goes, stick a cannon on a fucking
Yeah.
Saracen, and there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's your lot.
Because that's what that's kind of what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Because so And also it means that because the Brits are always expected to basically be outnumbered, it means they can also withdraw quicker.
Yeah. It's basically the entire section crams into its Bradley and goes.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole point.
So,
the entire... not
A
Bradley.
single point kill been
Sorry.
made though.
Yeah, go on.
As far as I'm aware, the development of the Bradley was to keep up with the M60, not the Abrams.
I think
And it's
requirements change midway through the process.
Yeah, because Abrams comes in, and then it's like,
It's a requirement from what I'm reading for the A1 to keep up with the Abrams, because it gets an uprated engine,
Yeah.
but not for the original.
But we're referring to...
Yeah.
We're comparing M2A1.
We're comparing the 60s one.
Okay.
Not 60s, 80s, not 60s.
Yeah.
Anyway, next
Which
question
point
then,
it
please.
is-
Yeah.
Sorry, go
So, the next question is, do you think the AG-8 Harm is overrated and isn't as good as the Alarm missile? Do you think the Alarm is the best anti-radiation missile for 1990? Honestly, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not that familiar, and they're very.
I mean, as soon as you develop a harm missile that will track on last known radiation, so that you can counter the up until that point entirely effective strategy of turn off the radar and the missile goes ballistic. Like the fact that the Alarm has the ability to pop a shoot and kind of loiter is useful, I guess. And during the 1990s, we don't have, at least against likely opponent systems, it's not like a Tunguska system is going to likely try to engage the missile with its guns.
Well, the Serbs did try.
I mean, like, they're both
And this-
effective missiles. It's like, it's not like... The 88 had a lot more battle use. And we know it works. The Alarm, I don't think we've provided anything to Ukraine. So I don't know if it's been tested against... Well, had more continued exposure to combat experiences that the AGM-88 has.
Well, apparently they were used in Yugoslavia,
Yeah.
according to the wiki. And
Yeah,
they
would have been,
both worked well in both
Well,
the
I mean,
Gulf
the-
War and Yugoslavia. So,
Because
sorry, not
they're
Yugoslavia. It's the
targeting-
Kosovo War.
Yeah, because they're targeting exactly the sorts of systems they were designed to kill.
Yeah.
So I think I guess the alarm's loiter feature is nice to have, but I don't think it's that much of an advantage.
Before you do the next question, Fleet, I'm going to run because I need to go pick up my sister from Manchester.
All right, fair enough.
Donuts.
Nice to have you, as always.
My condolences.
Have a good evening.
Yes.
Yes, that's good.
And you all. Good night.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh.
So the next question is disqualified. It's talking about the Viking, and the Viking is a post-1991 vehicle. So that question is disqualified.
You're out.
I'll quite happily go on a rant about the Vikings, just not that Viking.
Where are we?
Vikings. So look what we got.
Hubbity.
There's so
Ah,
many
the Norwegians
Vikings. I don't actually know
trading
which
horny
Viking
helmets
he's talking
for-
about.
Horny helmets.
It's the amphibious vehicle, the twin section amphibious funny machine. But that's all I'm gonna say on it. I'm just having a look. Lazy Author says, Lazy Author San asks, will you receive a bribe to admit that Hosh is the ugliest ship to ever exist? No. No.
Yes, he will.
No, I won't.
You would say no to
How
$1.
big of a? Okay,
It's a-
Fleet,
Yeah,
Fleet,
like
Fleet,
it would have
Fleet.
to be a significant amount of money.
Oh, wait,
Yeah,
no,
it's a
Fleet,
matter of
think
price.
smaller here. You only have to admit it once.
Yeah, like it would have to be. You are talking in the hundreds of millions for me to accept that.
So you could admit it, and then collect your funding, and then recant it.
Yes.
You got to think strategically about these
Oh
things.
yeah.
If you're already willing
Stop
to be
teaching him to
bribed,
be a politician.
if
So
you're
so
already
what I'm
moving-
hearing is that Fleet it's either $100 million or a BJ.
No.
Moving
Yeah.
swiftly onwards.
Yeah, but
Next
that
question.
that second option would also not be
Moving
sufficient.
swiftly onwards, Fleet.
Okay.
No. Hang on, guys. If see, Fleet, you got to think if you're going to be accepting bribes, then you've already shot your credibility and integrity. So you might as well accept the bribe, take the money, and then flip flop later on.
That's what I said I would. I just said that.
I know.
Okay, you also have to get some edgy music, some stock Nazi war propaganda movie footage, and then start making videos about naval innovations that could have turned the tide of Sunday.
I ain't
and
becoming Mark Felton.
Of course, not. You become Fleet of Oceans Productions.
Oh, for God's sake! please.
They also
I
need
have-
like, some catchy music track in the beginning and end.
Yes, and sort of talk about how the Nazis had rocket torpedoes that could have changed the course of World War II. Something they tried, actually.
And also clickbait video comments. So people actually click on your videos.
Gunnery Officer asks, is the M6 comparable to the TOG 2 in terms of project-wise?
No.
Not really?
No.
No. Not really, no.
Not even close.
M6 worked.
Hey, Talk 2 worked.
Yeah, that's
M6 caught fire.
TOG 2 also caught fire.
So they can share caught fire together. So I guess this makes it equal.
Basically, I mean, like M6, like when M6 appears, it is technically speaking the most powerful tank in the world, because the US 3-inch gun is the most powerful tank gun in the world when it is fitted to the M6.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's one of those things where you look at it's just the logistic argument of if the Liberty ships that are supposed to take it all to Europe can only lift 30 tons with their cranes, having anything heavy is completely pointless.
Yep.
I mean, it wasn't just a logistical. The armored force simply didn't want it. They
Yeah.
saw no use for it.
Well,
It was like it was
Well,
part
it
of the
flip-flops.
logistical.
It's like elements, like the elements of the army were like, if we can get some, it'll be useful because we can use them for like breakthroughs and stuff. But they're never a big enough faction to actually get any deployed. Unlike with Pershing, when you've got the guy in charge of the technical branch going, "This is amazing," and I'm basically just gonna pull rank and annoy people until they do what I say.
I mean, regarding the Pershing, at least, he didn't really annoy people. I mean, he annoyed the armored force, definitely. But more, he convinced people in the War Department that this was the solution they needed, and the War Department just, ordered the armored force to use the tank.
Yeah. It's
And
like,
also-
it's like, look, we know you don't want this, but it mostly works, and if we have you accept it, it shuts that guy up. So for the love of God.
It's more of a
Yeah,
case
so-
of on a
There was also
unit level.
expectation that the British might buy them because technically Pershing's turret is configured to accept a 17-pounder.
The British are like, we're literally building something very
Well,
similar.
When Britain finds out about Pershing, Barnes says it's ready to go, even though the first Pershing won't arrive for testing for like 5 more months. And so Barnes does lie to the British about it.
Typical.
Because the Brits are still talking about T-14, and Barnes is like, no, we have this better thing. And the Brits are like, interesting, tell me more.
The man is just constantly trying to find a way to make sure the Pershing program exists.
It's also worth mentioning that the army was very much not happy that those tanks were actually tested on the field, since they didn't saw it as a good idea to test equipment which wasn't yet approved for service.
Yeah.
Chieftain, I think, has a number of videos on Pershing
Yeah.
and its
Like-
development and deployment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sort of,
For
but-
Pershing stuff, refer to that.
Right, so
So
next question.
The issue with the British side is the fact the British, when they get told about the Pershing, are looking at their resident madhouse called Royal Ordnance.
Yeah.
but honestly, I think
Also, can we...
T14 is one of the biggest
Alright.
cancelled orders,
Let-
going from
let
8,500 to 2.
Let Fleet knock this one over the head.
Yeah, moving on. Yuki asks, I have a question. What's the most accurate and well-presented book about J. Bruce Ismay? I have no idea. One of the heads of the White Star Line.
Yeah, I wouldn't know wouldn't even know where to look for such a
No.
book. I wouldn't even think a book be written
I
specifically
think this was actually asked yesterday on Dr. Clark's
about
server.
him.
Yeah, I don't know where you'd
If
be
it was,
finding
I
that.
missed it. But then again, I
It
don't have
is
a
very
user.
much one of those questions of ask on Monday. So not
No,
Monday,
no.
Sunday.
Well,
No, I
genuinely,
would
I'm
actually.
pretty sure this was. Like I said, I think this was literally discussed last night.
I would also
like
take
after the
this.
stream at like 2 a.m.
Yeah, I would also
Yeah, but I
take
don't
this
think
to.
Kiki was there.
Yeah,
And that's
she
not
was.
recorded.
She was because that.
Let Fleet finish.
I
Two
would-
of yous.
I would also take this to Ocean Liner Designs. If anyone would know where to get books on something like that, it would be him.
Yeah.
Right. So, Hamana. We're making progress now.
Harmona. I can hear the steam-powered, host-flavored gears of Fleet's mind turning from here across the
Ugh,
entire
they're-
Atlantic Ocean.
They're grinding, all right. They're grinding. I've got to get
He's
some oil
gonna
in there. I got to get some oil in there. You know, it's just,
Yeah, more brew for the brew gods.
yeah, it's just, you know. Okay, so unrelated.
I'm sorry, but you will need to go see Dr. Pepper about that addiction.
Way.
You'll never
Why
guess
would
what I'm
you drink
drinking.
Dr.
Ah, here we
Pepper
go.
When you're in the land that makes iron brew, what is wrong with you, Foxo?
Admiral.
Well, because it's made in Scotland, the land of the wildlings beyond the wall.
What? And you don't want
Admiral-
Fleet going to the other side of the wall.
Of course not.
Admiral.
Like Fleet's not capable of being a member of the Night's Watch.
I hate you
Yes.
sometimes.
I want to make a really cruel joke right now. God damn it, Foxo. Oh,
Admiral Wellesley
oh,
asks,
no.
quick question. If money was not an issue, how would you modernize Hood in 1937? Yeah,
Renown her.
But
Yeah, you-
money
you-
is
yeah, you basically put it through the same program. That,
money was never the issue for them.
Yeah, it's you just
yeah,
put you just.
if talk about theoretics, it would be take as much of Vanguard's design as possible.
Mhm.
Well, probably no, it wouldn't be because at this point in 1937, you're not there isn't Vanguard's design.
Yeah, you just put it through the
Yeah,
same
but
program.
No, there is. It's
There is.
all
You
like-
just
Because Vanguard came later than
Just
37.
do a renounce out refit.
yeah, just put it through
Yeah.
put it through the same process that Renown and the QEs are going through.
How many 4.5s do you think you can slap?
Oh
per
god,
side?
I dread to
Probably-
think of the AA
I
I
battery.
want to say probably
No.
at least 6.
At least
No.
6 pairs if you're doing
No, because
pancakes.
because Hood's internal layout.
Oh god, yeah, that's
Because
right.
look,
You can't.
Because Hood's
Look,
because Hood's internal layout was why they were more willing to go with the 525s because Hood's internal layout prevented the 5 twins per side of the 4.5s. I think the most you can fit on Hood and be safe is 4 per side, which is why they wanted to
Whose
go
5.25s
5 and a
we're gonna have
quarter.
to steal?
Then yeah, I'd go. Then honestly, yeah. And also, to be fair,
Yeah.
if I want the long range AA, I'd want the 5.25s anyway.
Because
If I can get them.
which would be a problem with like unless you on Hood you fit her with a mix of BD mounts like on the carriers and like what Renown gets, and then some of those open backed mounts that Arc carries, and double deck her like that. So have BD mounts on the lower level, and then have an extra couple of the open backed
Open mount on
mounts on the top level, sort of US style in terms of a double deck rather than all on the level.
Which it wouldn't be the worst of ideas. I'm actually kind of curious how that would look. But
It's possible.
for simplicity, I would just go with
Provided-
5.25s. But yeah.
Yeah, if you're limited only to you want turreted secondaries with their own dedicated magazines, Hood's internal layout leans more to the 5 and a quarter.
Yeah, it saves on. I know. I get you saying that internals could be changed, but that adds complexity and cost and time,
And
most
time.
importantly,
Yeah,
which is
like that's yeah, because Hood's rebuild was expected to take about 3 years. So if Hood goes in If Hood goes in 36, 37, she's
coming out during the war.
She's coming out during the war, right at the point when the 5 1/4s are having the major shortages, because you're trying to equip the Didos, the King Georges.
Hence, which
the expectation is
coming from.
Yeah, and also because she started earlier, they've probably committed to the 4.5-inch mount. If they're like, we're putting her in 36.
Yeah, that's true.
So she's probably coming out with probably 4 per side. I doubt they'd go with the double layer, but she also probably gets extra octuple pom-poms to compensate.
That sounds about right.
Because she's got the length to fit like 6 of those per broadside.
I was gonna say, since it's 37 and we are the ones refitting it, all of the pom-poms.
Oh yeah, all
she
the
has
pom-poms.
She has the deck space for all of the pom-poms.
Yeah.
Keep talking, folks.
You could probably fit an open back 4.5-inch mount super firing over her 3rd turret, so that she keeps a 10 barrel broadside. I don't think you could fit a BD mount that high.
Night saying once again she'll be out in 1940 to 41, so she'll get the 24 114 millimeters and 12 twin turrets, so 6 per side.
I don't think she can fit that many.
Right, she probably can if you give her a lion style superstructure, where you've got the 3 stacking levels of them, because that wasn't the design present on the lines, and that's the only way you could do it.
I think it really depends on if she goes in say she goes in January 1st, 1937.
Yeah.
The Navy probably by January 1st, 1939, the Navy's fairly convinced war's coming. And they need, and with Scharnhorst and Gneisenau in play, the Royal Navy knows they're going to need Hood because she is fundamentally the only capital ship they have estimated to be in theory can be available within the year, that can fight a Scharnhorst confidently.
Yeah.
Renown and Repulse can if they're together, but Hood's the only one that can take a twin one-on-one.
Reconstruction.
So I think she comes out
you
soon.
guys need to remember this reconstruction has a fix the weight issues and correct her armor weakness on the deck. It's yes, they're trying to fix some of those issues, but the issues Kilibid's talking about, you would have to do more than just fix that. It is a total redesign of her internals, which I don't think was on the table.
No.
There was some, but not this level.
Yeah, like the internals were going to be reworked to accommodate the mounts, but because of the limitations of her internal structure, was why they figured they were going to be, which is why they figured she'd carry fewer mounts. Like, that can be compensated, which is why I think, especially if she's a ship that is in theory ready to go right when war kicks off, or they accelerate her rebuild in 1939 to 40, that she commissions with fewer heavy dual-purpose AA, but probably enters the fleet with the heaviest medium caliber battery in the fleet.
Do you think they'll put the unrotated projectors on Hood?
Oh yes. Probably.
Oh, yeah, because they haven't got to the point where they would remove them yet, because they were planned to be removed later anyway. But yeah.
And there probably aren't enough pom-poms to give her a full fit. So yeah, I think she enters the fleet with UPs. King George entered the fleet with UPs.
Well, Churchill forced them on that one, didn't they?
Well, they figured the UPs were, well, initially one of the theories regarding her loss was it was caused by the UPs, which is why they get pulled off really quickly. But no, I don't think. I think Hood probably comes out with a lighter heavy dual-purpose battery. Especially given that if they're starting in 36, they're basically hard committing to the 4.5. Because her actual plan is to go in 42, which is like, okay, the 5 1/4, well, peacetime 5 1/4 production should be up and running, and she would probably be getting 2nd generation 5 1/4 mounts. Because she basically
could be very scary.
Well, without the wartime experience, they're probably just bigger. The gun houses are bigger, which mitigates the problem that the Mark 1s had.
Yeah. And to be fair, just fixing the issues from the Mark 1 is good enough, in my opinion. It's not quite the same level as the full Vanguard improvements, but it's still better than nothing.
Yeah, because in theory, Hood goes in, because the original plan is for Hood to go in 42. So she'll be getting equivalent equipment to the Lions. Because that's the battleship grade kit that's being made at the time.
Well, the question now would be is, we are putting Hood in at 36. What's getting delayed?
Queen Elizabeth, probably.
Honestly, isn't really much of a loss, to be honest.
Actually, if it's Queen Liz, it is.
Because she doesn't come back into the fleet until 41. Well, I think she's hit. I think because Hood's meant to take QE's spot when QE comes out.
A refit Hood is definitely more useful than a refit QE, don't get me wrong, Sea Dodders. But QE in her refit state was actually pretty good.
Yeah,
but you're replacing her for a better ship.
My thought is we can basically sacrifice something else instead.
But you're essentially taking what QE gets and applying it to Hood.
Thank you, everybody, for keeping the ball rolling.
And then, say, having QE...
Oh, yeah, as I said,
and then QE comes into service 6 to 8 months later.
But Hood is essentially everything you can do, I can do better. Hood is that to QE.
Yeah, like I don't think there's a major reason, because like you don't want to take anything from the King Georges.
No.
So they're gonna get priority on the equipment that's particular to them. So QE is the only older battleship that's getting a refit in this rebuild in this period. So if you swap QE for Hood in that period, you get a more useful ship at the end of it.
Yes.
Unless the Navy is willing to put both in, with the expectation that Warspite's out of her rebuild. Granted, she's got the 50-50 rebuild, so she's not as effective as and that you've got her, you've got Renown, you've got Valiant, and then you've got the Nelsons, Malaya, Barham, which they haven't got the full rebuilds, but they were the most modern of the unmodernized ships. I mean, in theory, you could argue that QE takes Royal Oak's place. Because Royal Oak's the R that gets the most work. Granted, and then ironically, she's the only one that's lost.
Yeah, isn't it?
Royal Oak was through 34 through 36, wasn't hers?
Yeah.
I think
the Royal Oak's already out.
That.
The three in particular, this period is Renown is 36, Valiant is 37, and Liz is late 37. So potentially, actually, you could probably swap out Valiant.
It might be a hindsight reading, but the one you don't want to take out is Renown.
Yeah.
Because also
Navy,
then you've got
the Navy
Oops, sorry, go on.
No, so the Navy won't touch Renown because they'll want...
Knight says you forgot Valiant.
Yeah.
I literally just mentioned Valiant, I believe.
So yeah, I think you probably replace Hood's. You probably replace one of the QE's refits with Hood.
Probably Valiant.
Or the Navy rolls the dice and thinks they can put two major capital ships in for a major rebuild at once, because they're already doing that with several ships. Because like Renown and Warspite, I think, are out of service for an overlapping period, so it's not.
Yeah, Warspite comes out in June 37. Renown goes in. What's it called? Not September. September 36. So.
Yeah, so
like almost half.
If I remember correctly, a part of the reason
Can we knock this on the head, please, James?
The overlap was because just how bad a condition she was in.
Yeah. Can we knock this on the head?
You've also then got the shorter refits of the various
Dragon,
R's.
Hurricane.
All right, Fleet's asking to move along.
Scoot asks, here's a harmless question. How would you refit modernize both Courageous and Glorious as battle cruisers in the 20s and expanding on that in the 30s and 40s? Honestly, it's going to be...
Can't.
No, you can. You've just got to basically change what they are.
Yeah, you got to do a keel up rebuild.
Not
We're talking
really.
Italian style refits here.
No, you don't have to do a keel up rebuild, but you do have to change a lot of their internals. Basically, what you
Take
look.
their nameplates off and put them on brand new ships.
No,
using the
pretty
guns?
no, you don't really have to do that. Basically, what you're looking to do is to turn them into the world's biggest supercruisers. You trade their 15-inch guns. You spike the hulls for another set for 4 super-firing 9.2-inch triples.
What?
And then you turn them into the world's largest supercruisers.
This feels
Yeah,
like one of the biggest wastes of resources I've ever heard.
If I have to do this, then I'm doing it this way. I would rather scrap
Please.
them and be done with it. But if I have to do this, I'm doing it my way.
Those
Counter
hulls
proposals.
barely have light cruiser protection designs.
Counterpoint. I got a
you're-
counter proposal for you. If you do a bit of strengthening work, you basically probably have a ship that has the same compartmentalization of level and tool strength of Invincible.
Mm-hmm.
So stick some more 13.5-inch gun turrets on it. Call it a day. Just call it
I feel like-
Invincible 2.0.
I feel honestly the reason that I want to go with 9.2s is because it gives me more barrels, and it's still completely overkill for any treaty cruiser, and even something like a
Range
Deutschland.
bracket
also-
split.
You've also nuked its potential factor of we don't want to fight this.
Yep.
We can fight. We might not want to, but we can fight this in comparison to if they've got 13.5 or bigger guns. It's nope. The chance of us getting hit is too high of a risk.
What? No, that's well, yes, what you said is true, but that also applies to the 9.2-inch gun proposal.
No,
This
it
is-
doesn't.
This is a
Massively
ship
cut.
with 12 9.2-inch guns. That is a
Which
Yeah.
are slightly
Yeah,
higher than.
I'm sorry, a
cruiser
Baltimore would go bet.
no. It absolutely would not.
Actually, a Baltimore probably would have a reasonable chance of fighting.
No, it
Depending on the
wouldn't.
scenario.
They're in a similar range bracket.
Yeah, but one of them's gonna hit like a freight train compared to the other one.
It's not enough of a difference if compared
It
to.
really is. Like 12 9.2-inch guns versus a ship with 9 8-inch guns. That's a massive difference.
It's still a force a treaty cruiser could look at and go bet.
No, it
You have
absolutely
say
isn't.
8 13.5-inch guns, and suddenly that a discount
No.
Congo.
You don't want
A
to fight. that.
Balti's not going to go bet against it.
No, it doesn't go bet against the other one either.
It does.
No, it doesn't.
Right, but the thing is, what is a bigger threat profile? The 9.2s or 13.5?
8 13.5s is a bigger threat, I'm not denying, but I'd much rather have more rate of fire and more
You're
barrels.
not getting that much better rate of fire. You're definitely getting more barrels, but the actual rate of fire is not going to move that different, realistically.
it is.
Wait,
it
are
is.
you saying you could fit 8 13.5s on a Courageous?
Yeah, I could. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I could
I
fit.
don't
Yeah,
worry.
No,
is
that's
it on
not
a 9
possible.
juke?
Then again,
Is it on a 9 juke?
but also though, I don't think you're fitting 12 9.2s on a Courageous.
You
You could
bat-
probably fit 9.
No, you can get
I
away
think you
with
could
12.
probably squeeze the triple.
Where
You
get?
could-
Or
Where
three
are you
triples.
getting this extra turret from?
Let me have a
Like
look.
this fourth turret, I should say. I can
You
see
could-
fitting 2, 4, and 1 F, but if you're now getting, yes, they're long, but what are you doing to internal machinery, Scoot? If you're then adding a fourth turret in, you're having to effectively add a turret fore and a turret aft. Unless you're going weird
Turret
and going
half's
3,
not too
4,
hard.
1
You
aft.
could turret half.
Yes,
you could.
Okay,
you
no,
could- you could-
because you'll probably end up doing what the K designs were looking at doing, which is the F2 turret sharing the same magazine.
Yeah, like, and also you can. There is superstructure you can rearrange aft to get that aft super firing, and you've got plenty of room forwards to rearrange. You've got plenty of room to do this. Especially, it's one of the reasons why. It's also the reasons I opted for 9.2s. They're just smaller.
You're also using a
turrets to
much
work
more
with.
outdated gun.
I am, but then again, aren't you the people who keep banging on me? No, Fleet, we don't go with a modern 8-inch gun for the Royal Navy. It's always 9.2s, and now I do that.
No.
You're all
At the
going.
time of World War II, the Royal Ordnance has a modern 9.2 inch gun.
9.2.
Then why wouldn't they build
don't.
one for this?
They will have
Because
to design one.
they'd have to entirely start a new design program based
It's either
probably
that or
off
they're
the old
throwing in
one,
the old one. It's either that or they're
Yeah,
throwing
but
on
you
the
gotta
old one.
remember the old ones. It's the same model of gun that you're talking the armored cruisers having.
Yes.
I'd probably.
It's long in the tooth,
I'd.
but at that point, just stick 12-inch 50 cals on it.
I'd probably. Oh, okay, actually, hang on. That
Run, boys.
Admittedly,
Fleet's thinking.
actually,
the entire
Boxer,
issue of Courageous
13
isn't even its armament.
13.5s might not work, but if we blend together all of the design proposals, 912s
12
could.
inch.
912s could. 2, 4, 1/2. 912s. 912s could absolutely work.
The Royal Navy.
The Royal Navy's got the spare gun.
Yeah, but
got
also
the
the Royal,
ammo.
but also the Royal Navy is adamant they don't want any more 12-inch.
Well, here's the
But
thing.
if
All you're
It
doing-
it
all you're
ain't up,
doing
it
now
ain't
is
up to
just
the Royal
basically
Navy. It's up to me.
replacing-
It ain't up to the Royal Navy. It's up to me.
All you're doing now is just replacing the Lost Invincibles and
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
basically providing a pair of fast station ships, and I can probably, and if I'm trading,
that has no armor, but
yeah,
And also are much more expensive than average station ship.
you'd probably, honest,
Replace the original battlecruiser concept.
yeah. And to be fair, the Royal Navy didn't.
Fisher would be happy.
I can probably up the belt protection a little bit. As long
Then
as
you need
as
to at
long
least
as
get them to county level.
as long as I can protect their vitals, and ideally their entire water line
Orange belt.
against
Let's go, blast of the past.
against 8-inch shell fire at nominal battle ranges, that's good enough. As long as they can be protected against 8-inch shell fire along their entire length.
So you're looking at 4.5-inch belt.
Yeah, pretty much. 4.5-inch
It's
belt.
just the Invincibles too.
Basically, yeah.
Also a 4.5
It is.
A
inch
hit
belt.
Pixar movie.
Right, but here's the thing here. If you're talking about protecting its entire length, you do realize you're effectively over doubling the armor in most of its places, right?
You
Yeah.
likely pushed that
in
into the 25,000 ton range.
Oh, you're
Mm.
probably pushing this actually. No, because keep in mind, they're already at that base. They're already 22,500 tons.
Yeah, I'm
You're
just,
probably
I'm,
more
I'm
pushing
just
this to about 30,000.
bear in mind that
Oh,
was
that's not
bear
a
in
lot of
mind
armor
bear in
for
mind
30,000 tons.
bear in
Well,
mind
also, you're
that
getting extra
was
turret and extra room.
Let Fleet finish.
But some of us are also already talking, Bruno. Fine.
Yeah, but he has taken advantage, for at least for my latency, a couple of breaks, however fleeting in the conversation. Also, too, it's his show.
bear in mind the waterline belt was in full protection was basically if I can. If I can't, I want to protect the traditional citadel area. What I might do, one of the ways I might do this is I might move to all or nothing, because they're built as distributed armor scheme ships. If I go to all or nothing, that might buy me the tonnage I need for that 4.5-inch belt. I think we also need to rework the secondaries. Get rid of those very, very silly 4-inch triples. Probably replace them with single or twin mounts.
Probably twins.
Yeah.
Like,
So
But
in,
30,000 tons, that's kind of
once rebuilt, honestly, they're kind of useful as fast carrier escorts as well for Royal Navy carriers. Basically, they're enough for threat to see off anything bigger than a smaller than a full-on battleship.
that you're probably going to end up being colonial cruisers.
I wouldn't even rate this thing as being better than a Deutschland.
I absolutely would.
I wouldn't.
Like that.
4.5 inch of armor.
That's more than the Deutschlands carry.
That's the sort of load they'll be expected to be in wartime.
A
Well, at
Deutschland
full
actually has subdivision.
Yeah.
I would point out the fact that if it comes down to a gunfight, the Courageouses are probably going to win that.
Also, Courageouses aren't even 17,400. Their normal load's 19,180.
More
So if
guns,
you're
probably
saying that-
better fire control, and better protected than the Deutschlands are.
Better fire control?
Yeah, because this is the first rebuild to get them to this 9-12-inch gun state. We've got the rebuild in the
You're doing
30s
this
and 40s.
when?
This is the 20s rebuild. Then in the 30s and 40s, I get to do it again, apparently.
Even then, you are aware that there's 2 factors of protection with ships at this time.
I know. Internals and externals. Internals are not ideal.
I trust the Deutschlands to win because the Deutschland will ring courageous like a gong.
I'm just saying, at 30,000 tons, Congos has nearly doubled the armor.
The Deutschlands couldn't even ring Exeter like a gong.
They
did.
almost sunk heavily.
Almost. That was against the ship with
He was
8-inch guns.
foundering.
Also,
It's
that
like-
was also I'd point out that was a 1v3.
Yeah, that's the 3-on-1 action. With a lot of 6 inches being fired.
Even in a one-on-one fight, the Deutschland is going to get its teeth knocked in.
It comes down to who hits what first.
So that is the Deutschland can take the hit much better.
Right. In terms of internals, yes, it can. It's still not going to be happy that it just took, a 12-inch or 13.5-inch shell. But Courageous is going to dislike taking a modern 11-inch shell far less.
Then exit.
The thing that we have to deal with here is I have to pick an option that minimizes the risk while maximizing the use for these ships. The one I've come up with is the best way I can see to do that. The only thing I could do better would be in the 30s and 40s, reworking their internals as best I can.
Nah. In my opinion, in the 30s, just build them up as oversized idols.
Yeah, just go to hell with it. How many 4.5 or 5.25s can we slap on this thing?
And then just have them stick to a carrier at all times.
But the only thing is that wouldn't really follow the Royal Navy doctrine.
It would.
But if you're the one apparently having total control of this does this, well,
It
because
would
again,
be
these
funny.
things are not going to be first or even second line combat units.
I could see them being first line combatants with an asterisk.
Where?
Indian Ocean.
Following Renown around.
That's
I could see them being used as the
Just
large
because
colonial gunship.
I say following Renown around because they're probably fast enough to keep up with her. And just putting someone else to shoot at that's not Renown.
She can sell her life so Renown lives, maybe?
Yeah.
It's not about that.
you
It's,
prob-
I don't know. It's,
if you turn her into a super AA refit C class, you probably see one of them in the med running shotgun for the various carriers, the molten convoys.
Yeah.
Um,
Knight.
Would the Lustrious
things-
survive?
Honestly, that would be
we're not-
quite amusing.
Fuck the 8 League of 10.
Knight,
Yeah.
Knight, you're right. Hood, Renown, and Repulse do make a British large cruiser pointless, but if I have to do something with them, the Admiralty won't accept an anti-aircraft cruiser as a concept in the 20s, so I have to do something with them in the
Yeah,
20s.
the 20s now.
And that's one hell of an anti-aircraft cruiser.
Yeah, but in the 30s and 40s...
so essentially, it's a discount battle cruiser that, if you're lucky, they'll be mistaken for the real battle cruisers, or they'll be working with the real battle
Well,
cruisers.
no, by the 30s, we're going to go all in on the AA refit. I'm going to strap as many 4.5 biscuit tins and 4-inch AA to them as I can.
Yeah, but you want to put them in against all the other Royal Navy ships to do that?
Considering what it would take to do that, yeah, it would only take a couple of months.
I mean, do you think maybe the US Navy would request getting her for a bit?
Are we talking keeping the They battery around, or
No, they're just we're
Replacing that.
we're just pulling the main battery out, and we're just putting 4.5 everywhere.
so you're reworking the ship from the ground up again
Round up.
in a time
I
where
mean, unless you're
space to
doing
do
like
that's limited.
And you're gonna do that in a couple of minutes or a couple of months?
Oh. This whole
Yeah, probably
question
looking at
is
least
this
2
whole
or 3
question
years
is silly. To be fair,
Mhm.
I guess,
Yes.
like I said, discount battle cruiser to work with Renown.
I mean, yes, but fuck, you know.
Because I'm gonna be real. Renown, when she goes hunting after the Shan horse, is scary. Adding 9 12-inch guns to that fleet that
Yeah.
can keep up with Renown
Well, yeah, Knight.
makes Renown scarier.
Well, yeah, Knight. Converting them into aircraft carriers is what actually happened. But I can't do that.
Yeah, I think that's why Knight's saying just
Well, yeah.
do whatever. Turn them into drone. Well, you turn them into drone carriers. We swear these are definitely not aircraft carriers.
Admiral Wellesley asks, would this have been better than the final design for Deseven Provincian? It's the design of the ships as originally conceived. No. The design of Deseven Provincian as they emerge post-war is a thoroughly modern post-war cruiser, and arguably one of the best gun cruisers ever built. It's up there with things like the Clevelands, the Des Moines.
The closest
the-
direct comparison are the 3 Tigers. Pre-war hulls with post-war guns.
Yeah.
So the question is, and then it's a question of comparing the Bofors to the Auto 6s.
And I already did that in the previous ramblings.
Mhm.
And it was basically we figured that the Deseven Provincians are better as gun cruisers overall, just because the simplified version of the mounts. It's
Better for
just
gunnery, but not so good for dual purpose.
yeah, just
Sure, but then they're relying more on lower caliber medium AA than the 3-inch.
yeah. Although I think that they have 3-inch, the Deseven Provincians do.
No, they have 57 and 40.
50s.
57 is 2-inch.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so that was the bit with the Phantom questions. Oh, it's one of these again. Brandon Larson asks, what if all the US forces deployed during Desert Storm were teleported through time to mid-1940 on the Western Front prior to the Battle of France and placed under control of Allied High Command? How quickly does the war end in Europe? Within a matter of
Done
weeks.
this one.
A month or two?
No, a matter of weeks, not even a month.
No, I'm saying a month or two mainly because they're going to have bridging issues
They will
Yeah.
100% have bridging issues.
and fuel issues.
The air
But-
forces that were deployed to Desert Storm had access to nuclear weapons. It ends in less than a week.
Yeah, Empress Hood.
Yes,
I
but-
mean, Hood puts
that
it best. Hood puts it best. TLDR, what Reich?
I mean, you basically have like a week's worth of testing in France of every single type of fuel the Allies have, putting it into an Abrams and seeing
Well,
if
the
it
Abrams
goes.
thing is, the Abrams
Go.
gas turbine
Do-
can burn
Did it
a
go?
lot.
Yes, noted.
Yeah, like the thing with the Abrams gas turbine is that it's not gonna like eating lower quality fuel, but the Abrams gas turbine can eat pretty much anything you throw in it. It might grumble a bit.
Pierre, the local French petrol station owner's special blend does not work.
Yes, but put some kerosene in there and it just
Red
might.
one does.
Wait, I'll just put it this way. The Abrams engine's multi-fuel in the same way that the Chieftain's engine was multi-fuel.
I mean, like, we know it runs on diesel, because
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah, but
Australian
it-
Abrams run on.
But it has to be converted to run on diesel.
Don't
It has to
think
have its
so.
ECU and its timing changed.
Now. Let's do the more simpler thing. Just
M60's
delete
there.
Berlin and then tell, you know.
And also, like, the M60s
I
are
mean,
there.
Yeah, M60s, AMX30s.
Well, no, it's only US
eliminate
forces.
eliminate the Luftwaffe on the ground.
It's just like the. I mean, the most horrifying thing is you've got B-52s coming in and B-1s, and I mean, the F-117s are going to go Hitler hunting.
Can somebody copy paste the exact wording of the question?
Yes, I can do this.
I mean, do you
Forces
like you just
deployed, so they won't have nukes. They have access to nukes, but they won't have nukes.
Yeah, but they don't even
Yeah,
need
but
nukes.
nukes.
They were
Nukes
deployed
hit
with
hunting.
nukes, though.
unless you count the B-52s in the continental United States as having access.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's
They were deployed with nukes, and so were the ones in the UK. I don't know about you, but
Well,
like 12
you say
nukes
deplo-
to end a war.
Like when you saying deploy with nukes, like they never carried them operationally, but there were weapons available in the base's ammunition bunkers.
But like,
gunnery officer only if you take me with you.
oh, me too. But like, just you don't need nukes to do this. A couple of paveways in suspected location where Hitler might be just done.
Yeah.
Because
I
it's not
think
like
let's-
the Luftwaffe can intercept you.
regardless of how exactly they do this, the end result is likely going to hit the Germans so hard that it may cause significant cessation of internal politics and bureaucracy operation.
A German combat engineer with a satchel charge.
Yep.
Yeah, like pretty much an Abrams is going to get as many kills as it has armor penetrating ammunition.
And honestly,
The-
even
the-
one,
the-
even
the greater
120
question
HE,
is,
120 HE will still
coming
kill
up-
things.
coming off like how
How? What? Did you? Hello, folks.
Hello, yeah, hello.
Is
Yeah.
my
still here.
is Discord having a moment? I think Discord might be having a moment.
I think this had a moment because I couldn't hear anyone, and I thought like my internet crashed.
I think that's just you guys. It was fine.
Yeah,
on
we're
our
all
end.
fine here.
Mm,
Yeah.
German internet strikes again.
Yes.
I also
Can
So-
we all just agree that
There
it'll
are-
be over in at most
Couple
2
months.
weeks?
Yeah. Pretty. Whoa. Is
There
my
is
That was
more-
the Dutch channel changing.
There is more tanks available to the Desert Storm contingent than the entire German army that did.
And
Mhm.
we move on.
Yes, we absolutely
Yes,
can. Brandon Larson asks, question for the panel. What if an asteroid of the same size that killed off the dinosaurs impacted Europe during either World War One or World War Two? What is the result of such a calamity?
The world ends.
The world, yeah, the world
Yeah, the
ends.
world ends.
Yeah,
That-
the
No more
world
world.
It's
Yeah, it's
congratulations. You have just
It's currently believed that the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs created the Gulf of America.
Mexico.
notionally.
Funny.
No, okay, so
She's trolling that.
notionally, today, if about 10 years before the asteroid hit, we all fell under one autocratic regime without complaint and with full compliance, we might be able to, we as in humanity as a species, might be able to survive that level of asteroid impact. And might is doing an obnoxious amount of work there.
So what I'm hearing,
I don't
Ron,
know
is
if you're getting a government. If you're getting a
World War
government
One
that
would
size,
go down
might as
in
well just build
history.
Stonehenge.
as the
That's-
world as the war to end all wars because it ended the
Um,
world.
if it hits Europe in the 40s, God forbid in the teens, that's an extinction level event. Everybody dies. We get to, I don't know, do lizard people then get to become the next dominant tool using race?
Nah,
No.
think of
No.
cockroaches.
Who knows?
No, birds,
Dolph-
birds.
Or is it
Dolphins
crabs? Is it
or
crab people?
octopuses.
Crab.
Everything,
dolphins.
everything evolves into crab.
Yeah, everything
Well,
evolves into
we
crab.
all revert to crab or achieve crab, depending upon your viewpoint, in the end.
Yes.
But that's sufficiently
No.
far down the line where I think we can say that the reins get handed over to something else. Yeah, essentially, any of these super large. There's a reason it's called an extinction level event, because that's what it is.
Planet
It's gonna-
crackers.
no,
Let's be real. The only thing
Yes.
about World War II is that the birds in 100,000 years.
Okay.
Did you press the wrong button, Fleet?
No, I did not. I did not press a single thing.
Well, that time it just exploded.
What the fuck happened?
Yeah, that's That-
Apparently, you've restarted ramblings.
No, I didn't do a thing.
I don't think he did anything.
No.
Honestly, I think just Discord decided
Yeah, I
to
think
crash for a
Discord had
moment.
fart brain.
Bad train.
A what?
Really,
But also,
really,
just-
they let a
just-
Blizzard executive take over as CEO for like a week.
Not happened
and
yet.
Discord's breaking.
Not happened yet.
Dude.
Also, technically speaking, they're not actually making the decisions currently.
To address a point from Darcidius, no, the Gulf is
Back
an
in a tick.
area on the other side of another continent that has a lot of oil, people who speak different languages, weird cuisine, and has been fought over for centuries. Oh my God, I just described the Gulf of Mexico.
So,
Can we
next
say-
question,
can-
Fleet.
Can we name it in a way that offends everybody?
No,
What? The Gulf of
unfortunately.
Ecuador.
But then it would appease Ecuador.
How about the Gulf of Britain? That should offend everybody.
Now, the Gulf of Cuba.
The Gulf of Wales.
The Gulf of Hugo Chavez.
Was it
I
Fleet?
could say something funny, but sadly that
Oh,
might
the
start
Americans.
touching into the political side of it.
Next
so,
question, Fleet, or no?
basically.
Fleet, you still there?
I think we may have killed Fleet.
Yep, we did
That's
it.
fine.
We finally did it, guys.
So what's the next question,
Mission
guys?
accomplished, boys. We
Problem is,
got it.
the problem is, since Fleet's not been updating the document, I've got no clue.
Let me take a look.
Yeah.
Because Fleet, because
I mean,
Fleet's
that
not been-
take a look, or
continues-
someone post a question.
He
Well, 'cause
continues
the problem-
to want to take questions from both sources, and I have no way to build Powder Monkey to scrape Discord
Yeah, no.
because Discord's API does not give me the ability to scrape a text channel.
What was the last question?
What happens if the Chuklan,
Dinosaur.
or whatever the hell it was called, meteor impacts Europe in both World War One and World War Two? Or I think it was World War Two. Also, I have a Droidica now. Droidicas are cool. Because you don't have a Droidica, that means that I'm better than you.
Counterpoint.
Alright.
I have
Since we
the
cannot
force.
continue at the moment, someone throw out a question, we'll answer it, and until Fleet
Any
somehow
s-
returns back to life.
Any sort of question?
Might as well.
I mean, we
Something
can.
pass the
we
time,
can.
right?
Your typical gunnery officers stated quite a lot of them, so I guess we could.
Yes, I know.
No, that is literally the. I guess you missed the memo on the nothing past 1990.
Yeah.
Seeing as how that question literally,
straight up jumps to 2002.
yeah, 2002.
basically.
You're about 12 years past the threshold there, buddy. Old buddy, old friend, old pal, old chum, old mate.
Well, I think I have here a question from your typical gunnery officer.
Yeah, might as well. He has
Well-
200,000, so throw
Yeah.
throw it
So.
out.
Yeah.
It's only
Okay.
another 20 from Ramblings 80.
Okay, so question 17. During the Battle of Cape Engano, 1944, where the US Navy surface ships had a chance to attack the IGN Northern Force with their cruisers and destroyers,
Okay,
what would happen if they come in range with the Issa and Huda battleships? Since Halsey sent all of the battleships southwards towards Taffy 3 to try and chase Kurita, so the US only has a cruiser force chasing the Northern Force.
that's from this. That's from this week's.
Yeah, do you think the US...
Well, given that our Lord and Master has decided to not communicate again, when his whole job is to communicate, we'll just go with what we got.
I mean,
This
so
is why
a
you
basically U.S.
communicate.
cruiser force running into Issei and Hyuga. They should be in their battle carrier form at that stage. So they're down to what? 4 teams? or 4 twin fortunes. I mean, to be fair, having cruiser force just running into any form of battleship is not a good idea. How would it go?
The battleships kick ass.
Basically,
Like, until the missile, even an older battleship is something you don't
It's a
want to fight in a
battleship.
cruiser.
Yeah,
honestly, one of the advantages is that the U.S. cruiser force could just turn and go away.
Yeah.
Isane Huka can't chase.
It's like,
The
And
battleship
so-
is not.
until the
battleship-
cruise missile, you need a battleship to throw hands with a battleship.
And genuinely, the way I see it, the cruiser force is probably going to be like, okay, time to turn tail, ring Halsey up, and bring back the goddamn carriers.
Like, yep, carriers, here, some juicy targets for you. Please remove them.
Which will
Yeah,
put
the-
Halsey in an interesting situation of, do I go after Center Force or do I go after Northern Force?
The battleship is not truly outmoded until such time as
In the 50s.
you have reliable all-weather carrier aircraft and all-weather strike munitions.
What was
Yeah.
this?
Hello.
Is the question answered? Oh, hey, Fleet.
Yes,
Hey, please back.
the question is answered.
Yeah. Okay. Fleet, do you want to continue with with another one? We
Please
recently
do.
just had one
Right.
while we waited for you.
Oh, must
So-
go.
So, now we're on to the document. So, our Discord question: opinions on the Duck amphibious vehicle. Do you think the Terrapin is a better wheeled amphibious vehicle than the Duck? Is there a reason why the British hated the Duck and moved on with the Terrapin instead? Well, basically,
And French.
it was because there weren't enough ducks. That
And
was
the Terrapin was just better.
So I'm hearing it's the duck games.
it was
Because the Terrapin didn't leak, the Duck did.
Right, the development of the Terrapin was due to the shortage of U.S. manufactured ducks.
yeah, it's
The U.S. weren't producing enough.
yeah, that was it. And the Terrapin has its own list of problems. So there's the fact that it has its 2 engines centrally mounted, which means that it can't carry large loads inside it, whereas a Duck can. And by that I mean large single loads. It has 2 rear-mounted propellers, so that if one propeller gives it some advantage. And the driver can't really see very well.
The Terrapin also didn't leak, which is the most important part.
I mean, the Duck leaked, but it was never a big. It didn't really prevent it doing its job.
But the question is, why did the British prefer the Terrapin over the Duck?
They didn't.
And the
just there weren't
Terrapin
enough
has
ducks.
really overbuilt seals.
It does.
Yes, but it wasn't
And
so
the
much.
Duck leaks, the Terrapin doesn't leak.
It wasn't
If you're
preference.
true
It
to
was
previous
lack of.
language. Which one do you want?
I'll have a Duck, please.
I'll have a Terrapin, it doesn't fucking leak!
This is not as big of a deal as you're making it out to be.
I don't care, I don't like my boats leaking! I don't know why that's a controversial point.
It's not a controversial point. This is very much down to personal preference.
So, Fleet,
The
would you
two
rather be on
can-
a boat which has a big hole which leaks, or a boat which doesn't have holes?
I mean, honestly, yeah, the Quack. I'm sorry. The Duck is just
I forgot off
better
French.
in every other
Sorry.
metric.
Quack! Remember that his favourite ship is full of holes and should be full of more holes.
Quack!
Preferably ones below the waterline.
Hey, Rodot, Quack!
Oh, I need the blue infinite shotgun right now.
Quack!
I need to sit
Quack.
and find more people to play duck
Quack.
game.
Quack.
I haven't played that in far too
Whoever
long.
said you can't dive
Quack.
on a B-25?
Quack! Quack!
It's not recommended, but
Quack!
go
You
for
can do
it.
it.
Quack!
Just make sure you pull up before your control locks up. Anything could be a dive bomber as long as you pull up before the control locks up.
Anything can be a dive bomber. Once.
Wait, what? Oh, well,
Quack! We did it at the same time then!
huh.
Move on.
Like,
That's an interesting.
Oh, James is back.
Right.
All right,
For
now that we
context, this
have-
is what happens when Fleet shares a brain cell.
Yeah, I know.
Hello.
And
Crackers.
he-
Right, move on or I start moving on.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Once again, launch a clue.
Revolution. Get it right.
So Drac is not here, so we can't do that. But he did also get it answered, so that's fine. YouTube, would I be right to think that without the treaty limits on construction and the British Empire's industrial capacity, stuff like electronic warfare would have come about sooner? If not really,
You
electronic
asked this on brood ships.
electronic warfare is coming at the rate it's coming.
Yeah, the problem with electronic warfare in that time period is not the spare slack industrial capacity. It's literally the science hasn't been built yet. And yes, Brandon Larson, that was me, and then me and Fleet.
Yes, there was lots of quacking.
The problem at that point in time is literally that they don't even know what tools they need to make the tools to make the product.
To
Where
make
are
the
they
tools.
The closest thing you could probably get to electronic warfare at that time is high frequency direction finding.
Yeah, radio direction finding, things like
And
that.
that was pretty much at the time a really, really, really advanced thing. It's not until you start to get into the 1950s and 60s that you actually start to get the proper modern electronic warfare systems that you will see. And let me tell you, from being electronic warfare, that is a ridiculously complicated system that only now that we can actually understand better, due to the fact that we can actually see exactly what the frequencies and fingerprints of radars are on a screen. Whereas back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you actually had to listen out to tonals to actually ascertain what radar was.
Yeah, it's and also too, like, electronic warfare in that period isn't essentially electronic warfare back then is really just let me pump enough radio wells out into night. I deleted that question because it specifically refers to events after post 99 or 91. So
Yep, no post 91. That's when the Soviet Union falls, we stop answering questions.
yeah, but the thing with back to electronic warfare, back then electronic warfare is essentially I'm just going to put a lot of noise out on the EM bands. Boom, electronic warfare solved.
Yeah.
You really can't get electronic warfare as we understand it today until you start getting into at least transistorized components.
Yeah.
I mean, there was primitive analog ways of doing it. Just because you got some of the first use of stuff like chaff and flares does come about in the Second World War.
Meters.
So they are already looking at sort of proto-electronic warfare.
You do have window, okay, but even then you're still putting out a lot of noise in the EMAG spectrum. I mean, that's
Yeah.
an extremely simplified version of what basic chaff is. It's almost
I-
reduction to the point of absurdity, but
Mind if I add into that a little bit? I have looked into this. I've looked into the Second World War electronic warfare as it was. It mainly started out as ground stations in the UK because the equipment was just too big to fit into a plane. But what they could also do is, specifically with German night fighter communications, is that they would sometimes be able to have their own German speakers and fuck them around on the radios, telling them to return to base, go to somewhere that's not where the bombers are. And also, when they start getting things into aircraft, like the picture I'm about to put on now, you can see a fairly common photo of a Lancaster dropping bombs, but you can see on the top, on the dorsal fuselage, just in front of the dorsal turret, you see two large aerials, That is for what's known as airborne cigar. It is, as Runon said, it is the basic airborne radio jamming system of they've got a microphone in one of the engines, and it's got its own automatic scanner for frequencies being used. The Germans did cotton on to it quite fairly early on, so that they tried countermeasures like switching frequencies, even trying to use women on the radios because they thought their slightly higher frequency voices would not trigger the automatic frequency scanner.
It's clever.
So yes, again, it is absolutely basic, but the one thing to note, the slightly improved variant from Airborne Cigar, can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, I'll look it up after, but that was in the early Vulcans and Victors, even into the 60s and 70s. That was all this stuff was highly classified until not that long ago.
To be fair, actually, looking at Belfast, a lot of the electronic warfare equipment on board that ship, which has been removed, is still actually technically in fleet service. Or it is at least kept in as very secret.
Yeah, essentially, I guess another way to say it is electronic warfare in that time frame is who has
Very analog.
Who has more wattage. That's whoever's got the biggest wattage transceiver wins. Boom, electronic warfare.
So I just found that the Airborne Cigar was replaced by something called Jostle. It didn't bother trying to identify and jam specific frequencies. It just had 2 kilowatts of power and broadcast across the entire ground-to-air frequency band. It required no operation, just had to be turned on. And that was used in Valiants and Victors when they first started in 58 and 60s.
Brilliant.
Next.
Yeah, the next question is one I deliberately didn't answer on Monday, in something I'm not that familiar with, but some people here might be.
Go for it.
Question was from Admiral Wellesley. What if Madoka Magica became real in 1941? All the magical girls remain Japanese, wishes and all. Japan wins the Second World War and goes on to conquer the world. Basically. Oh well.
I don't know what this is, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
From what I've read, it's an incredibly depressing show.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Sounds on brand for Japan.
But the raw power, these are basically moving atom bombs in essence.
Right. Need more information here for people who don't know this.
That's all I know. I know that they basically.
Can we just not, because I can see anyone possible Moe who knows this shit.
I very much know this shit, and I will tell you right now, I am not going to give an answer because it's stupid.
Yeah.
Wow. If Moe's saying that, then
The context of the question is stupid.
Wow. If we don't usually get that line coming out of people.
No, we do. We just don't usually get it coming out of Moe.
Hmm.
Also, I have an X-Wing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you? I thought you were a Droideka.
But yeah, anyway, so lots of people die, lots of depressed young women, probably mass suicides. Moving on.
Michael, why did you not depress young women? Why did you not tell me my people existed?
Also, well, you say that actually, Fleet. But on the other hand, since they have wishes that can do anything, actually, they can kind of just go, no.
Yeah. So, next question.
All those dead people are now back to life?
Next question. What if by chance the RGA managed to dislodge the footing on Guadalcanal, especially Henderson Field? What actions would the Japanese take after this occurred, and what would happen to the Marines and Army personnel that managed to escape to the mountains or the hills? Are they going to hold out and conduct guerrilla warfare against Japanese now in and around the captured Henderson Field? Well, first of all, they're not going to run to the hills or mountains. They're going to get the US Navy to come and pick them up, or establish a perimeter and fight on. It will just
I think there is a big issue with this fundamental question. How did the Japanese dislodge the US Marines?
I think it's meant to...
Because they're not doing it with the original force they deployed in Guadalcanal.
Yes, I think the question's meant to... the question is if the US Navy is dislodged, which dislodges the Marines.
Well, to be fair, the US Navy was dislodged for a good while in the beginning of the campaign. That's why the Marines were stuck in a bad situation. However, the Japanese couldn't dislodge the Marines because they're trying to throw 600 men at 10,000.
Yeah. And even so, even if they do dislodge it and Henderson Field becomes whatever the Japanese were going to call it, it's literally a 5-second bell before the US comes back with more stuff.
Well, that's the thing, though. If Henderson Field becomes active, then the USN has a much more difficult time trying to get back to Guadalcanal because that's an active airfield.
Yeah,
it's just going to it's literally just turning the table on that from in real life, where the IGN has difficulty with Henderson Field because it's an active airfield. So the entire situation is the Marines is going to have to find a way to fight their way off Guadalcanal, and the US Navy's going to have to somehow force a convoy, or hell, they might actually have to do their version of a Tokyo Express and see how much people they can pick up there.
I mean, the US
is American Dunkirk.
I mean, the US is better set up for it, and also isn't actively trying to kill other members of the service. IGA versus IGN.
The entire thing is that in order for this to occur, the USN's priority focus is going to be how to knock out Henderson Field. You knock out Henderson Field, Japanese loses the extreme reach that a airstrike could carry, and you have a chance with the US Navy running in, eating as many Marines off of that island as possible, and regroup to try again. And yeah, it might end up just being B-17 carpet bombing the hell out of Guadalcanal or Henderson Field.
Yeah, that's probably about right. So, next question. YouTube, would the term Dreadnought battleship have come about anyway, even if HMS Dreadnought was not the first Dreadnought battleship? It depends.
Probably not.
The term all big gun battleship would exist, because that already existed with or without Dreadnought. But it depends on whether or not the British go, well, our ships will Dreadnought, even if they're not. Then again, there's also the whole thing that do you really want to call them South Carolinas? If Dreadnought's not the
Carolinas,
if Dreadnought's not,
they would be called big gun battleships.
They'd probably just be called either big gun battleships, or they would just be called
Dreadnoughts.
Battleships. No,
no,
they could just be called,
they might call them super battleships for a second.
It's either going to be battleship, Dreadnought, or possibly the localized version of King or Emperor or something. If the conic.
How were the pre-Dreadnoughts again called?
They were just battleships.
They were just battleships. This is why I say they'll probably just be called battleships.
They someone might call them super battleships, but that's a term that's unlikely going to
potentially fast battleship, because these are now much faster over the previous generations.
Yeah, either that or it's going to be whoever has that type of battleship that also has good PR sense and has a ship with a short punchy name like Dreadnought.
Dreadnought works because it dreads naught.
Yeah.
South Carolina. Not happening.
No.
What was it? It was Dreadnought and...
Hence why I think stuff like Connings...
No, I don't think you're getting
Kings.
No, because they were second gen.
Yeah, but I'm doing a name example. I'm doing an example.
But it's why, if you go off all of the first-gen Dreadnought names, you've got Kawachis, you've got the South Carolinas, and you've got Nassaus, or you've got Dreadnought. If it's not Dreadnought, you're probably going to just get a very boring, very official title like Battleship, Fast Battleship, Large Caliber Battleship. Like,
I mean, unless some sort of weird nickname comes up
yeah,
with
potentially.
some of the ships.
But unfortunately, if Dreadnought loses being first, there's a reasonable chance they're not called Dreadnoughts.
No,
Yeah,
I
they'll
don't
be
think
called
so.
Dreadnoughts anyway.
Yeah, it's simple as this.
Because
The
Dreadnought
only
sounds
timeline,
fucking awesome.
Yeah.
the only
It does,
timeline where
but-
Dreadnought would not be a term that could be applied is if Dreadnought was not built at all. If Dreadnought didn't exist, then you're unlikely going to see, a Dreadnought as a overarching term for big gun battleships. If Dreadnought
I think it also
exists,
does. I think it
we're
depends on
most
how
likely
late
good.
Dreadnought ends up coming.
Right.
If Dreadnought comes a year or two after these other ships,
It's still going to be Dreadnought.
I don't quite agree with how that works.
Because, no, you've got to ask, why does the term Dreadnought stick? Because it is a photogenic name.
But also because it was the first of its type.
Yeah.
It
No,
has.
it's not because it was first of its type, it's because it was a very useful name to say to the press.
And don't
The Dreadnoughts early on were referred to as
Actually-
battleships.
And don't forget,
Yeah, like that-
and don't forget, there have been previous terms throughout history that have been retroactively applied once an example comes out with a punchy name. Like
Dreadnought.
not pre-Dreadnought. But there have been other examples where there have
Such
been
as?
examples. Let me think.
Cavalry. Cavalry as a term is a creation of, as we know it in the West, the 12th century France. Before that, they're often called localizations of horsemen.
And that was retroactively applied.
Yeah.
So it's basically because it's punchy and it's easy to remember. It's one of those things with dreadnoughts. Like it's just, oh, the British commissioned a ship called Dreadnought. Oh, ours looks like that. Oh, that's a good punchy name for this new type of ship.
Well, also too, and Fisher was many things, but he was definitely a publicist.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta know that people eat names like that up.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Thoughts on the Zimmermann coating for tanks in World War II? Do you think it's very much useless against countermeasures against magnetic mines or mines in general? Well, it wasn't designed against mines in general. It was specifically designed against magnetic
limpet charges.
which, funnily
It
It
wasn't
enough,
even
not-
designed against mines. It was
Yeah.
designed
Didn't even
against
work
magnetic
properly.
limpet charges.
yeah,
It
which
worked
fun-
against Olympic charges to the point it made the Olympic charge almost extinct.
the funny thing is, the Germans were the only real users of the limpet charge in a
No.
big way.
Wait, are you forgetting the Red Army existed and used a lot of them?
No, I didn't realize the Red Army used limpet charges.
And
It
to be
is.
fair to Fleet, I was under the impression that the German army was the primary by a very long stretch user of limpet charges.
The
Because-
Germans were the primary users of the specifically limpet charges. The Red Army, the British Army, and to a degree the American Army still use stuff like magnetic charges. Because against bare steel, it was just a very good way of getting them to stick to the tank without sticking to the soldier. Like pretty much everyone had their own version of them.
But the biggest problem with Zimmerit, much like their aneoic tiles, is that it was not very durable, and it took for f***ing ever to apply.
Well, not really.
Wasn't
By
it
the end,
also
it was literally just a half-an-hour process of painting.
wasn't it also somewhat flammable?
I mean, most solvent-based pastes are flammable while they are...
But if a
Before they
tank's
cure.
getting hosed down by a flamethrower, Bigger worries than the plane catching fire. Chief.
Why does the Netherlands mark the point that's almost 7 meters below sea level?
So, the next question. YouTube question. Favorite Fleet Air Arm Cold War fighter? Sea Harrier.
Sea
you want-
Vixen. Has to be
No
the Sea
opinion
Vixen,
because I don't know
personally.
the Fleet Air Arm.
The tornades! Oh, no.
Oh, come on,
Phantom.
Foxo, you can't.
Phantom.
Quack.
Fleet Air Arm Phantoms did look good, I have to admit, but Sea Vixen just looks
But
gorgeous.
realistically, the Buccaneer.
Yeah, Buccaneer probably is also a close second for me. Honestly, part of the reason why I also love the Sea Vixen so much these days is just because it causes mental damage to most people. Because they just
Dragon.
cannot stand
Dragon,
this
just come to the
side-by-side
document
cockpit.
quick. Are there some questions missing? That there's 3 YouTube, but with nothing next to them.
Because that's when we ran out of YouTube questions, because I put that in ahead of time.
Oh.
Expecting that to be one YouTube question.
Fair
It's
enough.
why then it's why at that point when I realized there's no more YouTubes coming, and then just Discord.
Yeah. Badger.
Mushroom.
Hey!
We're rich.
We're rich.
Snake! I see a
Rich.
snake!
We're rich.
Snake! So, Discord question 9. Do you think the Walrus is the best ship-launched float plane in World War II? Better than the OS-2U, Japanese E-13A, FM-1, or the German Arado A-196? I think it's
I would
horses for
actually
courses.
say probably yes.
I think it's horses for courses, I don't think.
It's a strong contender.
Well, it's
Yeah.
the plane that was able to do the most out of all of those, and actually did the most as well in service. Like the AR-196 was mostly just a recon plane. It had
Also-
incredibly limited capability outside of that, whereas the Walrus could carry depth charges and bombs if needed.
There's not many shipborne catapult planes that are actually amphibious as opposed to sea only.
Yeah. So, actually,
I
yeah, I
don't know.
probably would rate the Walrus as the best ship-launched plane.
I don't know. The Kingfisher could also do everything a Walrus can.
How often was it actually able to do it, though?
There's a difference between having to do it and
But
having.
being in the right place at the right time is also a thing in favor of it, which the Walrus usually was.
Well, if we're going with that, then sure.
Can the
It's why I'm saying,
Kingfisher-
like, from a level, personally, in general, I think they have the best overall design for it. But then also, in terms of actual use, I would say it was definitely the best. Just put it into sort of two
yeah.
separate, distinct
We are
categories there.
forgetting another good act. Well, we're forgetting another float plane.
Which
Oh.
one?
The Swordfish.
Well, yes, the Swordfish is also very good as well, but
So could the Kingfisher land on land?
I think the Kingfisher has wheels. I don't remember
Oh,
actually.
So I know,
No.
I know we occasionally use walruses from aircraft carriers from the deck.
Yeah, it's got wheels.
It's probably just a little bit more
Yeah.
useful in different
Um,
situations.
Yeah. Right.
I do
so,
think overall it probably is the best, and in actual service probably was the best.
Yeah.
So
So,
Swordfish also did well.
Discord question. Well, they're all Discord from this point on. Do you believe the myth that it's only the British that checked the German assault during the Battle of the Bulge and the US did nothing but surrender or retreat? No, because
What?
it's so
No.
easily disproven.
Who even
The
said
100
that?
The 101st would like a word.
Yeah, the 101st would like a word. And also, it's kind of... I don't know where that myth got started, but it's also a massive disservice to those who died holding the Germans back.
To be fair, Fleet, that's just one of many myths that are a disservice to those who fought.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't want to get into too much modern politics, but I think we talked to a certain president about that one.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I'm leaving it as that. I'm not continuing
Yeah.
my conversation. That conversation ends there. But carry on.
Yeah.
You mean vice
Yeah.
president, but not president, but yes.
No.
No.
No. And moving on,
Yes.
because that question was very quickly and
Yeah.
easily
Next question. In the 1970s Cold War conflict against a peer scenario, would you rather have the Japanese Type 75, German Lars, or the BM-21 for your MLRS? Well, I don't want the Type 75 for starters.
Why not?
Well, it's the worst of all three systems.
Why do you say that?
It carries.
If you say because of its orphan the stats, I will shoot you.
No, it
Yeah, I know,
carries
you're
the
right.
least missile payload out of all the systems. It's less mobile than the other systems in terms of strategic mobility, which is what you want in a MLRS like this. And also, just to be perfectly frank with you, I kind of want to grad dump things.
Yeah, there's a reason the grad survived so long.
Look, I'm not gonna lie. If it's the basic Mars, sorry, if it's the basic Lars, if it's Lars 1, I'm taking the grad. If it's Lars 2, that's
Still grad.
still grad.
That's grad, but I might take some fancy rockets with me.
Yeah. Grad dump. Ah,
You-
yes.
You can remember that grad. You can put a certain box on the side of it, and then you
Oh,
can shoot
yeah.
missiles.
Oh yeah, grad. I mean, grad is just like the Soviets really hit on a winner with grad. They really, really did.
Proof that on
I'm
occasion,
sorry,
Soviet
but
engineering
grad
can be
with the
decent.
252 millimeter thermobaric warhead on its like carrying 12.
I mean, grad.
Gimme.
I mean, to be fair, the Soviets were cooking for most of the Cold War. It's just after the Soviets fell that things got a bit squiffy. But for most of the Cold War, the Soviets were cooking.
Kept cooking with grad. Grad is grad. It's the Kalashnikov of it. Multiple launch rocket systems.
Oh yeah, like you
Um,
you could send a grad anywhere and have anyone operate it.
I mean, that's why most conscripts get sent to use those.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, most things in the Soviet and the Russian military is easy to use because just look at the pool where they get all their people from.
Yeah, but I was looking at the order of battle for the Soviet Guards divisions in the 80s. They had crews that were dedicated to reloading rats off the grads, because they would just take the rack off, put another one on in about 30 seconds, fire it off, take the rack off, put another rack on, fire it off.
I mean, the real winner was actually the Czech-inspired thing that came after grad. That thing had a rapid reload system. That was great. It was an 8x8 that had a grad on it, but it also had a reload pack included, so you could fire, reload in I think it was 30 seconds, and then fire again.
Yeah. Oh, the Soviet system had needed a second vehicle. The Czech one could do it itself.
Yeah. So, why didn't the US adopt the XM246 but put it on an Abrams chassis in a twin gun turret like originally, instead of installing it on an M60 or M48 chassis, or the XM247 Sergeant York but on a Bradley chassis with a single 40mm gun and probably a couple of Stinger launcher tubes? Because the US fundamentally moved away from gun-based AA for mid-range defense. For one thing, they'd already adopted M163 for close-in defense, and then for anything that wasn't close-in defense, point defense, they moved to missiles with Chaparral and Hawk.
Or the US Air Force.
Yeah,
Yes.
they
U.S. Air Force is the biggest argument.
yeah they looked at things like XM246 and things like the Sergeant York, but partially because of the failures of the Sergeant York, and partially because they went, well, for close in, oh dear god, the aircraft's right there, shoot it, we've got the Burt machine. And for slightly further away things, we've got the very capable and cost-effective things like Chaparral and Hawk. Do we really need a medium-range gun system?
To be fair, the U.S. wasn't even that keen on maintaining its 163s.
No, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, the US doesn't operate a
Their
ground-based
idea
air defense
of
system now.
short-range air defense is, here's this dude with a Stinger.
Yeah,
Now, each Air Freight squad have a dude with a Stinger.
yeah. And literally, that's what
Yep.
they adopted the Stinger as short-range air defense. I mean, like, they have the, what's it called? You know, the Humvee with the thing on the back.
The Avenger.
That's the one.
Yeah, but that's for the airbornes.
I thought the U.S. Army also deployed it as its point defense asset generally. Wasn't I thought?
No.
Fair enough.
No.
Well,
The
either way.
National Guard basically
it's-
took over after the airbornes were like, "Nah, we don't need this anymore."
Let me go over the vehicles themselves, though, because there's just something I want to point out.
Go for
Very, very quickly.
SPAAs do not want to use a tank chassis for it. Tank chassis are heavy. Tank chassis are very well protected. Tank chassis are absolute maintenance queens. If it's not being shot at directly, you do not want to use a tank chassis. A light tank chassis, maybe. An
The West
IFB chassis.
Germans. Yeah, the West Germans got away with it with Gepard because Leopard is Speedy Boy.
It's also because they didn't have to move it much.
Yeah, and
Yes.
also
One of the-
that turret's
There is
freaking
the
big.
advantage of if you're in a tank chassis, your tendency of having to move from artillery fire is a little bit less. You're more proof against artillery fire.
Yeah, and
Just
also
in case you
with
accidentally do get one.
there was
You've
also
also got to remember that
logistics.
the reason the Gepard also uses the Leopard hull is because the Gepards are expected to do direct fire rolls as well.
Yeah, and they're also
Against
working
stuff
with
like BMPs.
Yeah, they were also built to work with Leopard 1. It reduces your spares, requirements. A sprocket for a Leopard 1 will go on a Gepard and vice versa.
But-
Aren't the Germans looking to actually bring Gepard? I know Gepard went to Ukraine, and we can talk about this as it's tangentially related to pre-1991. Are they looking to build some new
Don't think so.
What
something?
they're doing is they're just replacing the fire control on the Gepard turret. That's what Ramtal said they're doing. And for when the Leopard 1 in German service transitions to the new engine, the new V12, they're retrofitting that V12 into the Gepards.
How many Gepards does Germany operate? Anyone know? I know.
Yeah, but I don't think they operate any anymore.
They've got them in
I think-
reserves.
Gepard went
I
out of
mean,
service.
do they? I mean, I
Well,
know they removed them from active service, and before the war started, they actually tried
Get rid
to
of
scrap a
Get
lot
rid
of them.
But it's one of those things that the last couple of years they've gone, the Gepards would be really fucking useful right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think not too long ago they re-established the Heeres air defense, the army's air defense, basically.
Hmm.
But Gepard aside, because the Gepard has the role of direct fire, much like an SPG, unless you're a very specific vehicle, your SPAA should not be taking direct fire.
Yeah.
It should not be in a tank chassis, because tank chassis are fuel hungry, heavy, maintenance queens, and completely unnecessary. Which is why the T-14 Armata derivative tanks fucking suck as a concept. But
please?
Yeah, so.
therefore, the
you might wanna
M60,
look
therefore the M60 derived SPAs and the M1 Abrams derived SPAs.
What
were
in
cancelled because there
the...
were
What
no
am I
idea.
looking at?
Yeah, a Leopard 2 chassis with a with an just
Is that,
just
is,
look
is
at the
that
other.
the Satellite Begone gun? Because that looks like the Satellite Begone gun. That's what I see when I look at that
That
thing.
Isn't
What,
that
what
the
is
one they
Germany
made with-
compensating for there?
No,
The loss of
that's
two
the
world
ones that
wars,
they
I
made for the
think.
Italians, isn't it? That's what they made with the Italians. And they got off from a Lera involved.
Oh, good times, good times. So, next question.
I think you're Pirate PDS rounds.
Do you think the F4F in early 42 to early 43 isn't as capable as any other contemporary carrier fighter like the Sea Hurricane, AM6, BF-190, and the Firefly? Do you think it's the weakest or most inferior fighter in World War II? Well, it's better than the Sea Hurricane for a start, in most respects.
I'd almost argue all respect.
Yeah, and it kicks the teeth out of the BF-109T easily.
It has an advantage over the Sea Hurricane of
Yeah,
it's like designed for this.
yeah.
It's
The
not a
only
slapdash.
the only real
that we-
competitors
Okay,
here are
okay,
AM6
okay,
and
We've
Firefly.
got to put an asterisk here, reckon. Is it the Sea Hurricanes that were the conversions, or the Sea Hurricanes that were purpose-made?
Probably the conversions if it's this early.
Because the Sea Hurricanes that were purposely made, that had the improved either turbo or supercharger on them, had the all-metal frames, and had the 420mm cannons. I'd say it's horses for courses. But if it's the canvas Hurricanes,
Yeah. Early
Fleet
Sea
Hurricanes-
Hurricanes definitely better.
Yeah, what I would
Late
also
Sea Hurricanes,
say. Sorry, go on.
equivalent.
What I would also say, that make it clear, the AM6 is a fair comparison. Firefly is a generation of aircraft after F4F. It comes in to service right at the tail end of the period under discussion, early 42 to early 43. So it's not really an equivalent to the F4F, and the F6F would be a better comparison. So I'm not really going to count
What was the
that.
question?
But in terms of the A6M0 versus the F4F, that's basically two different styles of aircraft. They're not better or worse than each other, you just have to fight them differently. If an A6M pilot plays to his strength, he can likely win. If an F4F pilot plays to the strengths of his aircraft, he can likely win, as we see during the Pacific War.
The biggest
Question-
thing about the Zero is not even its maneuverability or capability. It is literally the fact that it will fly further than anything else.
Yeah.
The question in particular, Moe, was: do you think the F4F in early 42 through early 43 isn't as capable as other contemporary carrier fighters like Sea Hurricane, AM6, BF-109T, and the Firefly? Do you think
I
it's
would
the
take a
weakest or
Wildcat
most inferior?
I would
Or
take
a
the
fighter
Wildcat
one.
over or a Sea Hurricane.
Well, this is what me and Fox were saying. We would take a Wildcat over the first Sea Hurricanes, definitely. The Sea Hurricanes that were then actually built for carriers, or at least had some actual work done to make them carrier capable. Then, depends on the situation. Then it's not quite so much I will take the F4F any day. But
There is
The
a
metal
reason why
skin-
the Wildcat
Oh.
is the only other fighter that went from the beginning to the end of the war.
yeah, genuine. Like, while some people might say that I don't like a lot of American stuff, no, like, genuine, America produced some excellent stuff, and the F4F was one of these. It did good work.
And like, don't forget, the Wildcat is the U.S. Navy's aircraft that went toe to toe with Zeros and blunted the IJN's air arm quite a bit, even before the Hellcat came around.
the Hurricanes, the purpose-built Sea Hurricanes, had over Australia had quite a good record against the Zero, but they were essentially point defense fighters on
Right.
the range scale,
Right, so,
which I've got short attention span, so I'd always take the Sea Hurricane because it's flying less.
yeah. Next question. What's your opinion on the P-38 Lightning? Do you think it's the worst fighter aircraft of all major Allied nations in World War II?
God.
No. Do you think it's still a bad aircraft even if they fitted Merlin engines like on the P-51? The problem with the P-38 was never its engines.
The problem with the P-38 is that it is a
if you put it
put
into a dive, yeah, good luck.
So here's the thing: the P-38 is a plane that pushes the envelope, the maximum capability the aeronautical industry could produce in the late 30s.
Oh yeah, like
The
it's
P-38 is the reason why a lot of the issues that high-performance aircraft in the war solved. The P-38 is the aircraft that made people realize, hang on a minute, these are shit that we need to sort out.
yeah. It's
The
also
P-38 fundamentally just it is a late 30s aircraft that is stuck with the aerodynamic problems that it had because the designer didn't know those problems existed.
I would still be interested in seeing what happens if you stuck 2 high-power Merlins in it, though.
I mean, politely, it becomes
yeah,
the best
yeah,
twin-engined
okay,
aircraft
okay.
of the war.
It makes no difference.
No.
Oh, it can.
No, it makes no difference. Trust me, it will make no difference.
Because it's entering. If you go for the best twin-engine aircraft fleet, it's entering the ring with aircraft like the Mosquito
Yeah.
and the Twin Mustang and the B-25.
Look,
And
the
Aussie will
entire-
win.
there
And the
is no
Muslim would
point of
like to have a word
replacing.
with you.
There's no point of replacing the Merlin, replacing the Lightnings with Merlin simply because the engine isn't the issue. Its engine is fundamentally perfectly fine. The issue is the airframe itself. You can stuff as much power into it as possible, but the airframe is just too draggy for it to do anything. The only thing you do to fix a P-38 is if you overhaul the entire airframe, but by that stage, you don't have the Lightning. You don't have the P-38. You have a complete new plane.
It sort of suffers from the same issue as the Westland Whirlwind did.
Yes. Basically, same idea. These planes are pushing the high-speed, near transonic envelope that, nobody realized, hang on a minute, aerodynamics perform very differently at that speed.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, P-38 is quite literally the reason why NACA did all those high-speed, high airspeed airfoil tests and stuff like that. And that's why P-47, P-51s, and a lot of other World War II aircraft gets those low-drag airfoils that allow them to go as fast as they can.
Mm-hmm.
P-38 is the result of that. So calling it a bad plane it's rude. And also the fact that the P-38 has stupendous amount of range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don't forget, it's an aircraft made in 1938, and if you stuff enough drop tanks on it, it has enough range to basically go alongside with 47s and 51s into Berlin and back.
Yeah. Hey, Yamamoto, guess what? Cinder block!
And that's it.
But
Like,
it's one of those
38s are the
aircraft
planes
that-
they send to the Pacific, because they have the range to fly around in the Pacific.
Yeah, and they
It's
have
a
the
plane
speed
that did
to-
well in the Pacific, but suffered from Europe.
It was just not as good in Europe simply because it is fundamentally a really big twin engine aircraft trying to do roles that, single engine fighters do.
Yeah. Right, moving on.
It tries, but yeah.
Look at the combat history of the 110
Do you...
or the 420.
Yeah. During the
It's
Cuban
better
Missile
than
Crisis,
those,
what if the situation escalates and the US invades Cuba? Would the US have difficulty securing and capturing the whole island since the Cubans would mount guerrilla warfare or even stop the US forces at the invading beaches? Cuba's going to be a nightmare. Cuba's going to be a nightmare. Like, it's going to be the worst thing US troops have experienced. Like, you think Vietnam's bad? Vietnam ain't got shit on Cuba.
There won't be a Cuba left.
But politely, it's a moot
To
point.
begin with, there won't be a Cuba, there won't be a US, there won't be a Russia.
Well, the funny thing is, it's not mad at that point. It's not mad at that point. It's like the US is gonna take an absolute battering, but the Soviet Union's gonna be gone. The US will survive. The Soviets will be gone.
No, it's gonna be
You think
the
the
Americans
US
land, the Soviet submarines launch nuclear torpedoes at the fleet, both sides go kaboom.
Well, yes.
And you don't think the moment the US troops lands on Cuba, Cuba isn't going to throw off the nuclear warheads it had on the island at the US?
I'm aware, but what I will say is, again, this is still the period where there is a legitimate nuclear weapon gap between the US and the Russians. It is.
Yeah.
It's not.
The Soviets at this time don't have as much in the way of strategic weapons delivery platforms as the US, i.e. intercontinental things to hit the US with. They have a lot of intermediate range, So
Europe's
fucked.
gonna, Europe's fucked. And also
But
politely,
for actual strategic,
and NORAD predictions, and actually post-war, in post-crisis, and analysis that both the Russians and the Americans did, it was figured that most of the bombers the Russians would send, the Bears, would not make it through NORAD.
They also said that about Vulcans and exercises.
Yeah, there's a difference between...
yeah, that's why we did those.
Yeah.
That's why we did those exercises.
And the Bear doesn't have the same equipment that the Vulcan does.
Yeah, but
I was making the point that you can't exactly 100% trust those reports because there's a lot of bullshitting in them.
But what I would say is, are some American cities going to be visited by the friendly sunshine? Yes. But is America as a nation-state going to survive? Yes. The USSR is gone. As is most of Europe, but the USSR is gone.
It's simply a case of mathematics. The Americans simply have more ways to throw more stuff at the Soviet Union than the Soviet Union does to return. The 80s are a bit more close together. But
it's when you get to the 70s. The 70s are when it starts to close, and the 80s...
Let's not speak, Fleet.
Sorry.
But yeah, in the 60s, again, both sides are still using liquid-fueled ICBMs. I'm not sure how many of them are actually starting to put them in silos yet, or how many are above ground. But the US simply has more.
The Soviets have...
as well as the B-52 force, the Regulus submarines.
Yeah.
They're still kicking about.
Yeah.
The first ballistic missile subs are kicking about.
Yeah.
The 60s are not going to be a good time for the Soviet Union.
No.
If it went very hot.
The Russians have padded ICBMs still at this point, not siloed. The Americans are starting to put the silo fields in. The silo field proliferation has begun in Oklahoma and the Midwest. At this point.
And I think it's the 60s when the Netherlands incident occurs in the Soviet Union. The R-18 that explodes on the pad.
Yeah, it wasn't a good time for them.
I mean, to be fair, in the 60s was when I'm pretty sure they also had issues with their ballistic missile subs, because I think K-19 had her issues then.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Because at that time, obviously, the hotels were the first ballistic missile submarines to actually go into service, and then you had the Yankees, which were a bundle of fun to begin with. But from what I remember, we're still talking about Cuban Missile Crisis era, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So K-19, believe it or not, was actually off the US coast during that incident.
Uh-huh.
So she would actually be probably used as a first strike weapon. So she's got 3 Rs. Something.
Was that subsequent patrol, not our first?
That was the one after they chopped the reactor out and put a new one in.
Yeah.
Okay, so not the first mission then.
No, not the spicy mission. The next mission on.
Yeah, the R7s.
I would not love to. So I would not like to be crewman on that mission.
Mm-hmm.
As bad as the first one it was, going to be the second crew on board. Hang on, what happened to the first?
Yeah, because I think by this point she'd actually been upgraded to a hotel.
If you have questions about previous crew, just send requests for information to KGB.
Well,
and
there's a KGB
agent
officer
will
on the
visit
sub.
you to give you.
There's a KGB officer on the sub.
Ask KGB. Your local commissar will answer all questions regarding the ship's history.
It's fine. Zampoliet, please come with me to the reactor compartment. Shoves him in there, locks the door.
Yeah.
Okay.
Comrade. Yeah.
Just a quick question on that. If I can, before we move on. How survivable would K-19 have been if it had to launch, given it had to surface, raise the missiles up above the sail, then fire them.
Did she have a tail?
By
I'm
this
fairly
point-
certain she had a tail.
No. So by this point, she should have been refitted to the Hotel 2, which gave her the capability to launch submerged. Because during the refit where they chopped
Oh, so
the reactors out, they put in new silos, which allowed her to sub-launch.
oh, that's fantastic.
But she's also a rattly bag of shite, so, you know...
She probably has a tail. Yeah, she probably has a tail. A American diesel boat, most likely. Or probably one of the early American nuke boats.
Well, she almost twatted Nautilus.
Yeah,
At one
that
stage.
would explain it. Yeah, so she probably has a nuclear-driven tail
Friend.
behind it. Yeah. So as soon as the crisis goes hot, but then again, unfortunately, she'll be being fired at by the horrific Mark 37, so she may actually have a chance to launch before the torpedo
I am
slowly reaches her.
I am sad to announce that my ad algorithm is now giving me Hoi 4 ads.
Oh my god!
You should get Hoi 4.
No.
Yes. Quack.
If I want a time sink, I have Frostpunk. I have Satisfactory.
Quack.
Yeah, but
I mean, the funniest
you
thing
can
is,
time
it's not
sync with the rest of us.
Yeah, it's not so much the hotels that are the problem. It's the golfs. Where are the golfs?
Can we
So-
move on at this point?
Okay.
Please.
K128 is blowing herself up.
Okay. Sometime after Mao Zedong steps down from position as president in 1959, he dies of a severe heart attack. How would China fare with his death, and what would change in China in the Cold War? Probably not too much, to be fair.
Nothing.
Maoist thought was
Absolutely
still
nothing.
prevalent in China, so there would still probably be some form of Great Leap Forward and some form of Cultural Revolution.
Fuck's sake.
It's not as if they've got a cruise ship
Fleet?
just waiting in the wings to dismantle everything.
No.
Fleet?
Yes.
Can I quickly show you the picture of a BMP Sky Ranger?
I have seen it. It is the funny.
I've seen it. Okay.
So no, the big thing is Deng Xiaoping still takes a while before he actually consolidates enough power to step in.
Yeah.
He is the big reformist, basically. He's the beginning of the bye Maoist thinking.
Hmm.
So we're most likely gonna just have a uh
So, the next, yeah, it's probably best to.
Right, boy, we're still answering.
I mean, this is like my weakest part of Chinese history, so I'm probably unable to provide you with that much answer or a clear answer. So
Okay.
yeah, go ahead and move on for now.
So, oh yeah, excuse me. Opinions on the AGM-86A air-launched cruise missile. Why did the Air Force have two different cruise missile types in their inventory during the 80s, the ACML and the air-launched Tomahawk? Well, I thought the ACML was the air-launched Tomahawk. I don't think there also is I don't think you can air-launch Tomahawk.
You could air launch Tomahawk.
I thought that was literally the whole thing with ACML. It literally is just air-launched Tomahawk. The AGM-86 is literally just air-launched Tomahawk.
It's not the difference what it can be launched from. Because I remember reading that air-launched Tomahawk could only be fired from the large, big boys US had.
I'm looking.
But it's the same thing with the 86.
Yeah. I'm looking and I can't see a version of the Tomahawk that can be launched from the air. I can see land attack, I can see ship launched, I can see land launched, but I can't.
Ship launched nuclear.
Yeah, but I can't see any.
Can't you launch them in CPAR from B-52?
I thought those were MG.
AGM-84?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they're harpoons. Maybe I'm thinking of something else.
Yeah. Either way, it's well, if it's just two different. Like, I mean, why not? I guess you have more missiles to throw at things. Your magazine stocks are deeper. How are we doing? Oh, we've actually. Oh, wow. I have actually been going so long and having so much fun. I have actually gone past my time.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah,
You-
but we still got
Right,
more
here we go.
questions.
Yeah, but that's not. Yeah,
AGM-109 H&L model is the medium-range air-to-surface missile.
Yeah.
That's the air-launched one.
yeah. We've got more questions,
only
but
by about 10 minutes, Fleet.
yeah,
Good.
but yeah, well, that's good. It's a good job I caught myself before I went too further on because I've got other things I need to do.
No, keep going.
No. No. Right.
I'm gunshipping this bitch. Get fucked, 109.
So, anyway, thank you everyone for coming. I hope you've all enjoyed this week's catch-up ramblings. I know I have. It's been great fun. We've had Shipyard here. We've had Moe
that was
here.
190.
We've had
Never
Dragon
mind.
here. We've had Foxo, Sea Dodders, Ruinon. All the good people are here. Tomorrow, I am picking up my new car. So happy fleet noises.
I
Oh, there you
am.
go.
Duck?
Quack.
Are you
No,
getting your
it's not
very
a-
own duck?
I would like to get my very own duck, but sadly, no, I am not going to get my very own duck.
I am a Terrapin supremacist.
Oh,
Please,
shut
if
it.
you ever get a duck, you need to make a live stream with the duck.
Yes, I must.
Quack,
Yes.
quack, quack,
Quack, quack, quack,
You
quack,
shall
quack,
forever
quack,
make
quack,
live
quack,
streams
quack,
with the
quack,
duck.
quack, quack, quack.
Oh, we have
Interesting
fun.
news.
Oh, what
Mhm.
news?
GTA 6 is set to release on May 26th of next year.
Oh yeah, they
Oh
delayed it again.
no! Anyway,
We got a new pope before we got GTA 6.
Yeah, I know, right?
We got a lot
Yeah,
before
but
we get
I'm
GTA
sorry.
6.
it's your boy.
And released like Bethesda games. They don't
You
come
know-
out forever. Then you get like 4 in a row.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm
it'll
gonna
be
get married
actively
by
funny.
before that game comes out.
It'll be actively funny if Star Citizen comes out before GTA 6.
It would be funny if we got Half-Life 3 before GTA 6.
We probably
Watch-
are.
Watch.
Imagine
watch
they just
Valve
release it next week or so. They told
Watch
no one
Valve
how
release
far they got.
Half-Life 2.9, and then the next game in the Half-Life series is Half-Life 4. Just so they never actually release Half-Life 3.
That would,
Never.
that would be actually hilarious if they do that.
Okay, can we get Hood in here? Because I really need to lynch Rue.
Why?
Whoa.
He dared to question Valve. You do not question Valve.
No, we can
No, he
question
just did.
Valve.
Of course.
All hail the game.
How is
Anyway.
that questioning Valve?
Anyway, right. Thank you everybody.
Questioning our Lord
Take
and
care.
Savior, Gabe,
And
the
and
savior
I will.
of PC
Oh, she's
Gamer,
going.
the cage of EA,
Keep
the
it for
one who
tonight.
beat the shit out of Activision Blizzard so hard they gave up on NFTs and games. The
Right.
ones who curbed the excesses of Ubisoft. You will not badmouth the
Just be
name
quiet.
Yeah,
Valve
I think I'm
in
disappearing
this
now.
server
See you,
or any
see you guys
server I
later.
am in. Do you understand?